Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Saturday Night Cenobites. Every week, I raise funds for my favorite theaters in North Florida, the Corazon Cinema and Cafe in St. Augustine, Florida, and the Sunray Cinema in Jacksonville. So they're currently out at the moment, but they have pop-up drive-ins, and you can catch virtual screenings, and you can buy the virtual tickets below this video. And this week, I have a very special guest that I got to meet at the Orlando Improv one time, and we'll definitely touch base on that. And ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, my pal Gene. Hey Gene, how are you, pal?
I'm doing fantastically well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for being on the show tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. I remember the very first night that we met. It was our pal Marcus Crespo. He's a fellow
Yes.
comedian. He goes, Sreth, if there's anybody in this room right now, you have to interview. And I'm like, at the time, like I was interviewing comedians at the time, so like I knew
Yeah.
everybody and interviewed everyone. But I was like, I got to create a show where I interview like filmmakers or actors or entertainers and stuff like that. So when quarantine hit, like I have a new theme every night, and I interview like comedians to musicians to filmmakers to just artists all around, and raise funds for them and like my favorite small businesses and stuff like that. Because like times are rough this time around, and I try to get them followers too. So definitely subscribe and follow Gene on his Instagram and Twitter. They're on the bottom there. But you went to school in Mountain, Georgia. What was it like in Mountain, Georgia?
So yes, Stone Mountain, Georgia is where I went to school, and it was a bit of a culture shock. Well, I mean, we'll go back just a little bit further. Um, I came from just a quick little rundown. I was actually born in Kansas City, Missouri. Left at 2 to Seattle, Washington. My dad was looking for better job offers, and his cousin was like, "I'm in Seattle. The job offers." So I went to Seattle, and then my mom and dad split up, and then my mom met somebody who's now my stepdad. He got a job offer in Atlanta, so I came from Seattle to Atlanta to Stone Mountain, and it was a shock because, well, first of all, me being an entertainer, being do what I do, speaking for a living, I actually had a stutter and I was shy, so I didn't talk to anyone. And I got my speech corrected with living in Seattle. So then when I came to Atlanta in the late '80s, so this is like, so I'm 42, just on 42, so this is late '80s. This is like '87, so I was 8 or 9 years old. Moved out to Atlanta. I sound like no other black kid in the city. I had no idea what that meant. They're like, "Why do you talk like a white kid?" I'm like, and that made me. I didn't want to talk to anybody after that. I was like, well, it reminded me of a joke. It was either Preacher Lawson or his brother Justin, where they came from Portland to Tennessee, where they were like the only black kid in a white school. Then they moved to the South, they're the only white kid in a black school. Had the same experience to where I was like, okay, I'm not talking to anybody. I'm closing up. And what broke me out of my shell was in high school. I was not destined to be an entertainer. I was going to be in the military. I went into ROTC in high school. My mom actually signed me up for it. My mom was like, "Oh, there's a summer program. This is the summer of '93." She was like, I'm like, "Mom, I'm not military. Don't do that. I'm not marching or wearing uniforms." Turned out to be one of the best things she ever could have done. I adapted really well to it. All you gotta do is listen and follow directions. So I'm like, oh, I could do that. That's easy. And but there it was a leadership class, so you had to speak in front of the class. So I had to break out of my shell. So basically, what I did was I just imitated. I have very, especially a lot of black families have loud relatives. Mine is no different. I have a lot of loud aunts and uncles. You have to be loud to be heard. So basically, I just took that and applied that to my leadership class. I just was acting like my loud aunts, and they were like, "Oh, my last name's Magee. They call me Magee. Oh, Magee, you have a voice. Okay, keep talking, keep doing what you're doing." Like, just talking to, they called it was Air Force ROTC, so the class is called the flight. So all right, so get the flight to attention, and I was like, oh, okay. There, I'm actually, cause I didn't like loud people. It felt invasive, but I was being praised for being loud. I was like, oh, all right, okay, I could do this, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm a military person. But my dream was always to move to Orlando to work at Nickelodeon Studios. I watched nothing but Nickelodeon. Even though I worked for for the Disney. I was not a Disney person at the time. I was all Universal, Nickelodeon, Nickelodeon. But I'm like, that's a dream job. I'll never achieve that. But what really set it off was ROTC. We had a field trip. This was 94, 95, from Stone Mountain to Orlando, Florida. We went to Walt Disney World, Universal, Kennedy Space Center. And I remember I told my friends, when we get to Orlando, when we get to Universal, we're going to Nickelodeon Studios no matter what. I don't care to see anything else but Nickelodeon. And as soon as I stepped in that sound stage for that Nickelodeon tour they did back in the day, that's when I felt this is it. I don't know how, I don't know when, but as soon as I walked in that building where they filmed Double Dare and Clarissa Explains It All and all that, all these shows, I'm like, I have to come back here. I don't know how, and flash forward, 10 years later, after my stint in the Navy, and many auditions, and I mean, we could go into whatever, but I ended up making it to that studio in 2004, after countless auditions, and I actually made it. Uh, I was one of those goals where I set out a life dream. Uh, Went to the military, thought that was going to be my path, but I ended up be like, you know what? No, I need to go for it. I need to go for my dream, and got out of the military, made my way here.
Indeed, I grew up on Nickelodeon too, and because like my parents didn't have the extra money to get the Disney Channel,
Yeah,
so it's like I'm stuck with Doug and Rugrats and All Real Monsters and like Legends
yeah,
of the Hidden Temple and stuff like that. So it was like fantastic. So I totally know what you mean.
yeah.
And
It
like,
definitely shaped me as a performer. Like I told, even though I was a shy kid, I'd watch that show. You can't do that on television. That
uh
sketch show. That's what got me. I'm like, Mom, I want to do that. I'm like, I want to move to Canada. That's how I got obsessed with Canadians too. And I want to move to Canada and be on that show. That's what got me into. I'm like, I don't know what it was. I'm like, I don't even speak in front of people, but it just kind of, you know, clicked something in me. Like that's what you should be doing. You should be entertaining. And I would entertain my cousins who would come down from Kansas City. You know, even though I was, always the nerd, I was always the square. I was never cool, but I could always make them laugh. So it
that's
was
all.
always a part of me.
Most definitely, that's all that matters. If you got that, the laughter, and you can brighten up the world. So
Yeah, yeah, it was. I'm glad I had that early on. I just didn't know how to go about, making it my life. I mean, because nobody in my family is a performer. My mom works at Spelman College, 30 years going, one of
wow,
the top black colleges in the U.S. My stepdad, who's now since passed, he used to fix copiers and fax machines. And my dad actually passed last year. He was kind of a jack of all trades. My dad's a country dude from Louisiana, so he ended up going back home to Louisiana and just kind of working odd jobs here and there. But nobody in my family performed, so it was a bit of a challenge to tell my mom like, "Hey, yeah, I'm leaving the military and gonna be an actor." That's not something we did. So now she gets it, but early on wasn't so easy.
most definitely, indeed. And speaking of like colleges, you studied theater in Georgia,
Yes,
What was
yes.
those years like?
Yes, so I'm glad you asked that. So that was part of my plan. So when I was in the Navy, one question changed everything. So I was on one of the ships. I was either on the USS, I think I was on the USS Independence. I used to work on aircraft carriers. I was worked on the hangar deck. As I worked naval aviation, and we were like in the Persian Gulf or so. I was stationed in Japan, but we were always out to sea doing something. And I was always the kid because I went in at 17, so I was always the kid, the young kid. But everybody would talk about what they did back home in the States, and I didn't do anything. My first job was working at Six Flags over Georgia. That was my first foray into theme parks. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I know I can't have a full time of having fun all the time, but hey, I mean, little did I know I could. But anyway, when I was in the Navy, um, everybody's talking about, oh yeah, this is what I did back in the States. I used to do this, and everybody did all these awesome things, and I didn't do anything working Six Flags. And somebody's like, well, what is it you really want to do? And I'm like, well, I really want to work at Nickelodeon and Universal. One question changed my whole life. Somebody's like, well, why aren't you doing that? I was like, I don't know. I never, I mean, I'm 18 at the time, just turned 18, 19. I never thought to actually pursue, and that changed the whole trajectory of, okay, well, then how do I get to Nickelodeon Orlando from this ship in the Persian Gulf here? And then just kind of the wheels start turning. I'm like, okay, I need to finish my time. I did 3 years active. I'm like, okay. Um, I was trying to be a journalist. That was my initial day in the Navy, but they didn't have my ASVAB scores aren't high enough, and they weren't accepting any because you could they could do waivers, but they weren't doing any waivers at the time for points. My ASVAB scores, I should say. So, but I worked with some of the journalists on my second shift. So I did some radio in the Navy, volunteer radio at on the USS Carl Vinson, where I had 2 hours of soul power. So it was all R&B and rap music with somebody I made friends with when I was working kitchen duty. This guy used to load bombs, but he was a great freestyle rapper and comedian. But me and him worked kitchen duty together. I was like, hey, I'm going to do this radio show that the journalists are putting together. I want you to be my co-host. He's like, I'm doing it. So that's when I really was getting the taste of, okay, I got this radio show. And then that went away. I'm like, okay, now I really need to get serious. So I need to finish my time, do my 3 years, which is getting out in June of '99. Um, switch jobs, go into the reserves, switch jobs to be a journalist, and then use the GI Bill to go to college and study theater. Once I made that plan in my head, I was like, oh, this is I can do this. Once people have like a vision board or kind of write it down, it was all in my head. Once I laid it out, I was like, but I didn't tell anybody because nobody was an actor. So when I decided to, all right, I'm gonna get my honorable discharge, I just told everybody, oh, I'm gonna work at the airport because that was my job equivalent, working on the hangar deck, being an aircraft handler. You could work at the airport working on the ground crew, or it could have been a firefighter because we fought fires on the ships. We were trained firefighters, or it could have worked at the post office. But I'm like, nope, going in acting. So got out, uh, uh, used the GI Bill to study. Found a so when I was in high school, I didn't take any college courses because I was not college bound at all. I'm like, I'm well military. I took the basic classes in high school. So when I was going to George Pember, there were some classes I had to make up for. I was not good at math, so I had to take remedial math. I was really good at English, so I was a college level English. Um, but once I started taking my theater classes, I was all in on that. I was like, oh, okay. Once I discovered the theater, because I was doing my classwork, I was doing my math, and my English, and my Spanish. I never took Spanish before, and I was like, theater is it. But at the same time I was doing that, I went back to Six Flags over Georgia and got a Six Flags as a seasonal job. Went and was gonna get my old job back. I worked at the kiddie section, the Bugs Bunny's World section. But when I was interviewing, they were I was like, oh, I want to go back to Bugs Bunny's World, but they were like, oh, so what? And I mentioned I just got out of the Navy. Like, what's your Navy? I'm like, oh, I did aviation, but I did a little bit of radio. They're like, oh, you have a really good voice. You should work. There was a railroad that went around the park, and there was a live tour guide that would talk, spiel. They're like, you'd be great for that. I was like, okay, I'll try that. And that was my little first little taste of. It wasn't entertainment gig, but it was. I mean, I had to memorize the script and welcome to Six Flags Over Georgia. Welcome to the Clarksville train station or the Raymond Gap train station. I'll be your guy, Jamie Egan, and so then I got that, and then uh, let's see, and then I was able to switch jobs when I went to the reserves. I was testing to be a journalist. I took journalist books in. So back then, this was in 2000. I would I wanted to be a journalist. So you have to do like what's called an open book test, what's called striking. So you do the open book test, and then you submit it. And then if when the time comes to take the test, you don't have the book anymore. Hopefully you remembered everything you did, and you have to take that test, and hopefully you can test into that job called striking in. So it was a stroke of luck. I feel like Forrest Gump how lucky I got with that. I literally was. It felt like a commercial almost. Like I was, 1 week in a month. You're doing your reserve duty 1 week in a month. I was in this unit. It was an aviation unit. All they did is sit around and drink coffee and talk about what they would do on their 2 weeks, because 2 weeks out of the year they send you somewhere. But it was so boring. Um, but I was just sitting in the back doing my journalist. Nobody bothered me because I was doing work. Striking journalist. And I heard there was a journalist unit in the building, the Navy Marine Corps Reserve Center in Marietta, Georgia. But I didn't know where. But I remember one day, one weekend, I had my books with me, and I remember I went to the restroom. We called it the head, and I just went to go wash my hands. And these two older guys came in. They were doing a sweaty. They were doing PRT, like sweaty coming in, and they saw my books. They're like, "Ship me. What are you doing with those journalism books?" I was like, "Oh, I'm striking to be a journalist." And I hear this journalism unit in the building. They're like, "Shipmate, you're in luck. I'm the commanding officer of that unit. This is my executive officer. We want to see you up uh, in our office." And I'm like, "Okay." And literally just went right upstairs to where their office was, and I'm like, "Hey guys, I got sent by the CEO next to me. I'm Airman Magee, striking to be journalist." Everybody in that room were journalists, and they were all well, most of them worked for the local news in Atlanta. So I was working with actual journalists, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm working with the actual people." And they all helped me study my books. And I was like, "What about my other unit?" They're like, "Don't worry about that. We'll tell them you're with us. You're good." And they helped me get in as a journalist. And then they
Wow.
sent me to the DC, at the Navy Marine Corps Media Center, to learn TV stuff. I learned how to write in Norfolk, Virginia, and I did some radio in Puerto Rico for my 2 weeks, radio and some newspaper writing. So that got that in cover a military of that was like prepping me for entertainment somehow in Orlando. And then when I got Six Flags, I switched over to entertainment. I got really good at doing the train thing. I switched to entertainments there, and then I ended up getting into a circus, a Russian circus at Six Flags. They're like flying in a bunch of Russians to replace the old Batman stunt show in Gotham, and I told I want to be the ringmaster, and they put me in as a ringmaster. So I joined the circus for the summer of 2001, which I still have the VHS. And then in college, I got more and more into theater and found out children's theater was my specialty. So when we had theater practicum, we had this children's theater where we would go to different schools in Atlanta and put on shows. And I liked it so much, I took it again the next year, even though I didn't get credit for it. And I even wrote like a children's story to impress some girl, some Russian girl. So I got into Russians for a bit. I let you learn to speak some Russians from the circus. But so I was doing children's theater, Six Flags Entertainment, and I was a journalist in the Navy Reserve. So everything was happening all at once, like I had planned it, which is so weird. So that was that chapter at Stone Mountain there. Back this is in the early 2000s, 2001, 2002, from '99 to 2000, late 2002,
Indeed,
and
the evolution
uh,
of Gene is pretty awesome.
yeah, it took some twists and turns. Like I said, it feels like Forrest Gump. I was a lot of dead ends and false starts. I even worked at a movie theater for a hot minute just to save up some money to move to Orlando. It was one of the only jobs I did strictly for money, and one of my least favorite. I mean, the Navy is its own animal, but when I worked at this movie theater at Stonecrest Mall in Lithonia, Georgia, it was just to save up money. I'm like, well, some entertainment, it's a movie theater, and definitely the humbling is one where we all get humbled one way or another. I remember being shin deep in movie theater trash, having to compact it from the Saturday night before. They didn't compact it, so that Sunday afternoon, like, Gene, go ahead and compact the trash out there, and it was just a sea of just movie theater trash I had to compact. Uh, and I remember it was like cold. It's like 30 something degrees, 40 something degrees. And I remember I was like dreaming. I'm like, well, one day I'm gonna get out of this trash and be in Orlando and work at Universal and Nickelodeon. And so whenever I go back home to Atlanta, if I have time, I'll go back to that mall and revisit. that trash compact area. Like I literally came from trash, and
Indeed.
made it uh, to my dream of being a performer and kind of doing everything else. I mean, the cool thing about or the crazy thing about Nickelodeon is Nickelodeon Studios closed in '05, and that was a crossroads of what happens when your dream job goes away, when it doesn't exist. Like they were opening up a hotel at the time, Nickelodeon Hotel, but I'm like, that's not Nickelodeon. But I had a choice of either going to the hotel, the Nick Hotel, which some people did, or stay at Universal and they would find things for you. And I'm like, well, stay at Universal. And then I found out I could do a bunch of different things in Universal. I don't have to do just one thing in entertainment. So the Fear Factor show was opening up. So I was doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff and just learn how to work behind the scenes. And, once again, be humble. Like I'm not going to be performing at every venue, but I know what performers need. I know the mind of performers, so I ended up being like assisting performers and assisting backstage. And I still had a military work ethic. So when I was always showing up, ready to go, can work with anybody, and it ended up serving me really well. I ended up working so many different jobs. I ended up, nicknamed the hardest working man in show business. But a lot of people in entertainment are hustlers because you need to. Because if you get a full time gig at a theme park, or if you get a performing gig at a theme park, you might just get part time or on call. You still have to do your other jobs. So I'm glad I had that military background of just do what it takes. Don't complain, just do the work. And I just applied that to entertainment. Don't complain. This is what I want to do. Do what do I need to do to make this happen? Okay, then I'm doing it. And I just applied the stuff from the Navy to my entertainment life. So everything I'm doing is fun and happy, but I still apply the work ethic of show up on time. I show up early, show up ready to work, and it opened up so many doors. Like I got to work with professional wrestlers when TNA wrestling came to Universal. I got to work with them. I got to be friends with professional wrestlers, and I never saw that coming. You know, I got to be a GI Joe action figure because one of the fans make create an artwork for GI Joe, and I did like a cool thing for him. So a couple years later, he's like, "Hey, I'm updating the look for one of our GI Joes. You want to be the face?" Okay, so I'm actually the face of the GI Joe. This happened in 2016. So I have a toy action figure from an iconic toy line. And once again, I never saw that. I didn't set out to do any of this. It just kind of I call it my Forrest Gump luck. Right place, right time. You know, like my whole thing was Nickelodeon. Everything else is icing on the cake. So,
Absolutely, and thank you for serving in the Navy, and
oh yes,
absolutely, it means a lot
yeah,
to us and keeping our freedom alive and all that good stuff. And
yeah,
speaking of being at Universal and transitioning from Nickelodeon to Universal and staying there, you were a scare actor in October 2003 for Halloween Horror Night.
yeah.
What did you do as a scare actor? Like, which
So
characters did you play?
yes, that was my very first acting job at Universal. Um, at the time, so I got to Universal. Uh, Literally, my hire date was March 3rd, 2003. Literally 3303. That was like my hire date. Uh, so so I got in at Earthquake when that was a thing at the time because I was trying to get into Nickelodeon, but a friend of mine back home in Stone Mountain, my friend Amanda, who I studied theater with, she actually worked at Universal for a little bit. Um, uh, I was talking to her about getting into Universal. She was like, "Oh, you get a regular job down there, and then audition to Nickelodeon." I was like, "Oh my God, Amanda, that's brilliant!" To this day, I still talk to her on occasion because she kind of helped that spark as well. So I used my experience being a theme park employee at Six Flags, came down to Orlando and got a job at Earthquake because it was something of a performer because I had a spiel, even though it used to be entertainment back in the day, and they realized they used spiel. So I could have either worked at Jaws, Earthquake, or Jurassic Park Triceratops Encounter, and at Islands of Adventure. And at the time, Islands of Adventure was not on my radar, so it was between Jaws and Earthquake. And in Jaws, you have to pass a swim test. Now, even though I was in the Navy, I'm actually a terrible swimmer. I did like the basic, like I barely scraped by in swimming in the Navy. Fortunately, I didn't have a swimming job in the Navy, but I'm like, okay, I'm not a really good swimmer. I swim barely for survival, but not for pleasure. So I'm like, well, earthquake it is. So then I got in an earthquake, uh, and then this was March of '03, and then I kind of just started finding out what to do. That I got to be like an orientation tour guide within 3 months into my employment. I got to be back when they did orientation walking tour. Uh, I got to know everything about the parks and became a walking tour guide for new hires, which is not a thing anymore. And that was the June of '03, and then Halloween. And I told my management at Earthquake my goals of working in entertainment at Nickelodeon. So they signed off on all my paperwork. Every audition, you have to get signed off to make sure you have an amount of points. The more points you have, the better. 16 is the maximum. That means you haven't called in. And I always had, I've never called in a Navy, so I always had 16 points. The minimum you need is like 7, I think. But I was always at 16, so my manager always signed up on all my auditions. I always, any audition, like I always go to the Nickelodeon shows and get to know the people at Nickelodeon. This is before we had smartphones, so I really would get to know people that work there. Hey, I'm Gene. I'm working here. I'm working at Earthquake, but I want to audition. So they will let me know, hey, auditions are coming up. You want to audition? So I would get to know everybody in entertainment. I got to know like the break dancers, anybody in entertainment. Because I didn't know anybody, and that's how I got. I mean, before I knew what networking was, I was just making friends with cool people, not realizing I was making friends with all these different performers at the top of their games. Like all those breakdancers I met back in '03 are like famous now. Like one of them was in that movie The Greatest Showman. He was the bartender, B Boy Cloud. He was a buddy of mine back in the day. But anyway, but I kept auditioning for Nickelodeon, wasn't getting in, and then they had this Halloween Horror Nights, which I had never seen before. Now I did Halloween at Six Flags. I did Fright Fest. That was actually my very first acting job ever. Was October of 1999. That train I had did, they converted to the terror train where the conductor we got attacked by zombies and all that, and so my first acting job was actually Fright Fest 1999 at Six Flags in Georgia at the terror train. So once Halloween Horror Nights came around in '03, the summer of '03, I was like, oh, well, I started Halloween, so let me audition for that. So I auditioned for Halloween. This is what it was 13, the year of the director who got making snuff films. So I got in. Uh, I was in the Fun House of Fear. It was a 3D clown house, and I was a swing for the house. So basically, I would jump in. So if somebody called in, so I got to be a little of everything, which works for me because I was always a jack of all trades. So, but the coolest thing about that job is we had a Q Entertainment. We actually had live like freak show while people waited, and this was we were so the entrance was at the Toon Lagoon by Dudley Do Rights, where Kong is now, the new Kong ride. That's where our break room was actually, our break trailer. But our actual house was in Thunder Falls Terrace in Jurassic Park. It was in a restaurant, in a quick service restaurant, which to this day I don't know how they did it, how they put our house in a restaurant, but they did an amazing job. But one of the sideshow freaks they had was a legitimate sideshow freak by the name of Lizard Man. He was a guy that's done like TV shows and documentaries. He's a guy that like surgically split his tongue and got the little bumps underneath his eyebrows and sharpened his teeth and got the tattoos everywhere. So he looked like insane, had like the stretched earlobes and all that. But he gave so much good advice. Like in between sets, he would sit down and just talk to us young performers. And like he talked about this one time, like the best piece of advice I ever got from him. He was talking about he did this one gig where he rented an entire Greyhound bus for something. I'm like, you could rent a Greyhound bus? He was like, if the check clears, you can do whatever you want. I was like, oh, well, thanks, Lizard Man. So we had little tidbits of that. So I was a swing for the house. So I got to be, clown, sideshow freaks, and then I settled into a role I really liked. I was half man, half rhinoceros, and the person that was in that role didn't come back. So I got to do that role all the time. And the cool thing with that, at the end of everything, at the wrap, I ended up getting an award for best character for the house for my cast. And keep in mind, I'm brand new to the company. Like I just started in March, and I'm already 3 months into it. And I got to be an orientation tour guide, and now I win an award for a character. So I was like, huh, all right, I'm definitely in the right place. And then that led right into the Macy's holiday parade. So almost everybody did the Halloween, did the Macy's. So it went from scary clown to happy clown. And that actually parlayed into one of my hobbies. So one thing I don't put in my profile, people don't know, but I used to be a juggler. I was more of a hobby but I got really good at it as a teenager. I would juggle everywhere. Just one of those things that clicked. I would just fold in laundry, fold in socks with kind of try to juggle. Then one day it clicked, and I was like, "Oh, I can do this." And I would just gather tennis balls from tennis courts and just walk around and juggle for my friends, and juggle everywhere. Walk around the store juggling, walk around. I just juggled everywhere. Well, the Macy's parade was looking for jugglers. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can get paid for this!" All right, even though I wasn't getting paid much, but I've never been paid ever. So I was juggling for the Macy's parade, and I remember one day one of the professional jugglers who did stuff at the Sinbad show, a guy named Kerry Silson, to this day, who's an amazing guy. He toured around the world, horseback riding, a professional juggler. Pulled me aside. He's like, "Hey, heads up, jugglers get paid a lot more than what Universal's paying you. Uh, I know you don't know better." He gave it a business pretty much. He's like, "No, this is a business. They're kind of undercutting because it's a skill set. You're doing a skill. They're not paying for your skill, but uh, but know what your worth is. So if they're only paying you so much, that you do that." But I didn't know what my worth was. I knew how to do a bunch of tricks behind the back under the leg, but I didn't know. Okay, if you're paying me this much, this is how much you get. I didn't know that, but he was like, just make sure you know your worth. And I'm like, oh, thanks. I mean, I got like some solid advice as far as the business, and it works for all of our business too as a performer. Know your worth, whether it's you know juggling, acting, singing, dancing, all the entertainment. Know your worth, know where if they're paying you this much, or if you're not able to negotiate, well, okay, I'm going to give you what you're paying me. But that was like that. I think the last time I juggled for Universal, because then after the Macy's parade, I got into Nickelodeon shortly after that. That was my foot in the door. I just wanted to be seen by entertainment. That was it. That was my whole thing of doing Halloween Horror Nights and Macy's Parade was just to be seen by entertainment, just to get the foot in the door, just to be in their faces, and it worked. Because then I got into Nickelodeon shortly after the Macy's Parade, like a couple months after that. So yeah, it
In,
all kind of tied up, and one thing led to another. Literally led to another, and made it to
absolutely.
Nickelodeon.
Indeed. That's pretty good stuff. And I remember watching like Are You Afraid of the Dark? And so that reminds me of
Yeah.
like the horror and the Nickelodeon and all that
Oh
good
my
stuff.
goodness.
Yep.
Yeah, that definitely combined.
Indeed. I definitely I watched the movie that they had, like the miniseries that they had for it too recently, so that was pretty good. It brought
Yeah, I
back some
never.
memories.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I was like, I'm not gonna. I was gonna leave that. Like usually, if it's a reboot, it can be kind of iffy. Um, but if you have the free app Pluto TV, which is free TV, they actually have a Nickelodeon channel, and on occasion they'll show Are You Afraid of the Dark, the original episodes.
Oh, sweet. I remember
So,
some of those old episodes. They were pretty scary for my when I was a kid.
oh
So,
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was on Snick Saturday Night Nick.
yep,
So you can watch. It would depend on what year you watch, but it was like Clarissa Explains It All, or all that. Secret World of Alex Mack, Roundhouse, and then it would end with Are You Afraid of the Dark? That was like you know, like the 9:30 p.m. slot.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
that show had me. I was a scaredy cat. I was scared of everything. That show had me shook every single time. I was like, it was Twilight Zone for kids.
Yep.
Hey,
In,
I was
indeed,
like, dang.
indeed. And Kenan and Kel was a lot of fun too, for sure.
Yeah, that actually came shortly after. So I left for the military the summer of '96. So Keenan and Kel was just coming into their own like around that time. So I didn't really get because they really blew up like '97, '98. So when I came back in '99, they were in full swing. But I knew most from all that, and they kind of got the spinoff. Um, but But
Yeah,
yeah, but I'm a huge like horror movie buff, and found out that the dad in Keenan and Kel was in the original Dawn of the Dead from the '70s. Ken Foree. He was the big strong black dude that they had in every Night of the Living Dead series back in the day. But yeah, he was in the Dawn, and then in Shaun of the Dead, Shaun works at a place called Foree Electronics, which is a callback to Ken Foree, the dad from Keaton and Kel, who was also in the original Dawn of the Dead. They use his name as Shaun of the Dead, where Shaun works, and that's one of my passions too is horror movies and learning the ins and outs and listen to the commentaries of movies. And fun fact about me, I actually still get Netflix DVDs and Blu-ray service because I still like commentaries. And streaming doesn't do extra features yet, so I actually still get DVDs sent in every couple of days from Netflix or Blu-rays, and it's usually horror movies or comedies because it's horror comedy. That's kind of my life, and it's kind of I built my my life around about entertainment. Comedy, being an MC, making people laugh. But my roots are also in Halloween and horror events, so
indeed.
it's interesting how that worked out.
That's that's a pretty good combo, and I like the way that you have the Netflix DVD and Blu-ray subscription just for the special features because
Oh
that's what I
yeah,
go for too. Like the behind the scenes stuff is like my favorite parts of it, like the DVD and like the
yes,
featurettes are my favorite part, and like they don't do that on like Netflix or anything, and they need
no.
to get on that. They really
You know
do.
who's doing it though? I'll give it to him. Disney Plus.
Ah,
So I ended up a few months ago watching all the Marvel movies in the timeline with my my now ex, but we're now good friends now. But we were watching the Marvel movies in the correct timeline on Disney Plus, and we found out they actually have extra features on Disney Plus. You just have to hit the down button, and it'll have extra. It'll have the gag reels. It'll have deleted scenes, and it'll have featurettes. Um, but only one movie has commentary, and it's the final Infinity War. Actually has director commentary, and it was like everything I could ever dream of. It just had chock full of all this information, all the from the beginning till now, and but yeah, so that my passion is extra features, and my favorite. Okay, uh, like a week ago, I just came across my all-time favorite director's commentary. That usually director's commentary is like, "Oh, we had a good time making this movie." I heard a commentary where the director's like, "This is not a fun movie to make. This was a pain. Let me tell you how the Hollywood system works." And it was this movie. It didn't do so well in the theaters. Kind of a cult movie. It was in the late '90s called Swimming with Sharks. It's basically kind of like a Hollywood within Hollywood movie about like a Hollywood agents. Kevin Spacey is in it, but this jerk. Who, I mean, now we know Kevin Spacey's not that good of a guy anyway, but he plays a jerk Hollywood agent. But anyway, it's a movie about Hollywood, and the director had a difficult time making the movie and had a difficult time distributing the movie. He made a lot of mistakes, and he pointed out every single mistake. He's like, "I shouldn't have done this. Here's what I should have done," and he was like, "This is a very tough movie. I will never direct the movie again." He was like a moment of clarity. I had never in my life heard a commentary where he laid out the kind of the pitfalls of directing a movie or just entertainment in general. Because some of the things we kind of see as entertainers that kind of the underside of entertainment that it's not all sunshine and roses, but we still do it anyway because we love what we do. It's just like he kind of put it out there like this was not a pleasure cruise at all, but at the end of it, he's like, I'm glad I got my movie made. This is my dream. I got to see it through, and this is good. Most of us, our dream as performers, it's not easy. We go through a lot of ups, downs, and a lot of false starts and or false promises and all that. But I got to like hear it on the Hollywood level, and it was like, yeah, yeah, this is kind of what we go through. And now with this pandemic of entertainment, we're not seen as like essential. We're just kind of you know hopefully it will get you back in the fold again. I have to hand it to Universal. Like I'm still with Universal. I've been furloughed from Universal, but But up until the furlough, even though when I'm part time, even though the parks are open, they're only employing full timers. All the full timers are working. Us part timers are still just kind of waiting on the word. But they actually, in the beginning, like the first few, even when I wasn't working, they were still paying me up until the actual shutdown of the park. I was actually getting, even though I wasn't scheduled, I was still getting some money here and there. And then once the unemployment thing started, they actually did all the first steps of the unemployment for me or for us. So I just had to tweak some information, and they set up my unemployment thing. So, and oddly enough, I mean everybody's heard the story before, but those first couple months, I was actually getting paid more in unemployment than I was working at Universal or Disney or any of that. But I mean, I still want to work and do my job, still do my passion performing, but they're gonna pay me to take a break and just be cool. I'm like, okay, I'm I'm fine here. I mean, my needs are being met. I'm pretty smart in lifestyle, not in any huge debt. I was pretty smart with my money, kind of just saved it and allowed me to save more money. And my people from the Progressive Boat Show, they would check in with me. They're like, we might have some stuff coming up next year, not progressive, but some other touring. We may need some MCs, so some glimmer of hopes there. And the Disney thing, we haven't even touched Disney. I was like an MC for Walt Disney World. I kind of feel like I'm back into that, and that's because of Nickelodeon, and actually because of wrestling. The wrestling to Nickelodeon led me to Walt Disney World. So I don't know if we're gonna go into that, but I have so many different avenues of choose your own adventure stories of how I got to where I am now.
Indeed, and we'll dive into that for sure. You talked about earlier that you worked for Impact Wrestling as an audience
Yes.
wrangler, and you did
Yep.
warm up.
Yes.
What were like some of your favorite wrestlers you got to meet?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Fantastic question. Uh, I've actually so I got a chance to interact. So first of all, I started out as an audience wrangler out in the parks because of the tickets were free. And I kind of stumbled onto that. I was still working at Nickelodeon Studios at the time, and I used to watch WWF, WWE back in the day. Uh, and then up until like 2003, I kind of stopped watching it. I'm like, this isn't becoming enjoyable. So I just kind of stopped watching wrestling. And then a few months later, I heard they're filming wrestling literally in the soundstage next to me at Nickelodeon. I'm like, well, it's free. Let me walk over and see what's going on. And they had all these like wrestlers that I used to watch on TV, like Jeff Hardy and the Dudley Boys and like all these. I was like, oh, okay. And then um, the audience recruited wranglers was Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart from the 80s, who Hulk Hogan's old manager from the 80s. And he'd be literally in the park with his coat and his megaphone out by the Twister ride area trying to get people into the show. And I was like, that's Jimmy Hart. How crazy is that? But I would go in and watch the show, and I'm like, oh, the six side rings, and they have this X division where there's all the luchador, all the crazy style. And that's what, like, oh, I like that style of wrestling where they do the flips and the acrobats. It was like Cirque du Soleil, but a wrestling form. I was like, that's awesome. They're doing stuff that I wish WWE would do. So that's when I got into TNA wrestling. Uh, and then I became kind of an icon. I became a fan icon. So if you look up TNA towel guy, that's me. So in the beginning, uh, I would come over from Nickelodeon Studios. We had this purple polo with the orange Nickelodeon on it. I just have to take that off. I can't wear that sitting in the audience. But whenever something like cool would happen, I'd wave my shirt around, like Petey Pablo, North Carolina, come on and raise up. Uh, so I would do that, wave that shirt around. And then my buddy, Albert at the time, he ended up working Universal Security. He's like, hey, you should have like a white T-shirt or something so it's easy to see on TV. And I was like, oh, actually, by chance, my mom sent me these white towels from the Atlanta Falcons. My mom had a part-time job at the Georgia Dome, and she would send me the Atlanta Falcons swag, and she sent me some towels, and I had to have white towels. So then I would swing it, and then you would really see it. So now I wear like a white hat and a white shirt, and so every time something cool, and then I got two towels, and then wave them. Sometimes something cool happened in the ring, And then it became like an icon thing where like, oh no, something cool happened, you know, geez, swinging them towels, double towel guys. So if you go to Pluto TV, they actually have an Impact Wrestling channel, and you can see me in a lot of those just in the background. But anyway, how I got into working for TNA, once again, Forrest Gump moment, before the hour or so before the show, hanging out with Jimmy Hart, Mountain Town Jimmy Hart. We're kind of like fanboying, like that's Jimmy Hart, that's so cool. We're kind of talking, and other people are kind of talking on the megaphone, and they're like, "Gene, you have a good voice. Hey, take this megaphone and try to get these part guests into the sound stages." And I'm like, "Okay." And I don't know what I said, but they're like, "That's pretty good. Keep going." And then they're like, "Jimmy likes what you're doing. Just keep up." And I'm literally talking in Jimmy Hart's megaphone, and then I would do that for a few minutes, then go in and watch the show, and then next week, you know, for a couple minutes on the megaphone, go in and watch the show, and then it got to the point where I'm like, I like doing this more than actually watching the show. So then I would just stay. Once they're like, "All right, Jimmy, you go in and watch the show," I'm like, "You know what? I'm gonna stay out here with Jimmy." They're like, okay. And then it got to the point where I would just stay out there with Jimmy Hart, and then Jimmy Hart literally took me under his wing. Jimmy Hart, I credit him as a mentor. This is when I was still trying to get in to entertainment as an actor, because at Nickelodeon, I wasn't an actor yet. I was an assistant, a game lab assistant. I was hopefully going to get to host, which I never got to. But Jimmy Hart was like, he's like he always say, "Baby, baby, you got the smile, you got the energy, you got the voice. They'd be a fool not to hire you. A company would be a fool not to hire you as a performer. You just keep hanging in there." And I'm like, if Jimmy Hart is telling me this is somebody I grew up watching in the '80s, watching him with Hulk Hogan and the Hart Foundation, and now here he is giving me advice, and I was doing this all for free too, as volunteer basis. I'm like, because I already have a job, I'm doing it for free. And then he's like, "You're doing too much for free. I got to like Jimmy Hart would pay me out of his own pocket. He may give me like $20 or something, or buy me lunch at Universal." He's like, "You're doing too good of a work for free." So he was actually the first one to before TNA put me on the payroll. Jimmy Hart paid me out of his own pocket to recruit audience, and then I
Wow.
became, yeah, yeah. He paid me out of his own pocket. Like Jimmy Hart is a good, solid dude that would just, and he never complained. We were out in the elements in the heat of Florida. He'd have that jacket on, the long black jacket with all the mouth of the South on it, and and he was the one that could convince wrestlers to come out with us to kind of draw a crowd. And once he left to go back to WWE, wrestlers stopped coming out because once Jimmy Hart was a bit of a micromanager, and after a while, it was kind of like I was like getting on my nerves. I'm like, man, he's really just on everything at all times. But when he left, I understood why he did it, because things started to fall apart a little bit. People stopped doing what they did, which was, you know the success of drawing a crowd was having these wrestlers out, and once they're like, oh, we don't have to go out because Jimmy's not gonna hound us, or Jimmy's not gonna be on us, and less people start coming around. So we had to figure out other ways to draw people in, and but yeah, I just kind of saw, his work ethic, and he was kind of really on everybody. I was like, but now I get why he did it. I always understood why he did it, but it was clear as day once he was gone. There was missing piece. But then um, I got into the warm up, so and I still don't know how this happened, but I remember they gave me the microphone, and I got in there. I remember I had to take my shoes off because I couldn't scuff up the ring, because they didn't want any footmarks in the ring, because the warm up is not on camera. We're there before the camera. I was there before the camera started. I was there when the audience was coming in. So they say, "Hey guys, welcome to the sound stages. Here's gonna sit here, do this, make sure no videotaping," and then I would just kind of just make them cheer really loud, stomp their feet, just be like a cheerleader, pretty much. And they liked it. They were like, and then so I was doing two jobs. I was recruiting audience, and then I would run in, do the warm up for a bit, and then jump out and like, all right, it's still empty. We need more, recruit more people. So I was doing double duty, but I remember coming out of the ring, and like Jeff Jarrett, who actually started the company, he said, "You're doing great." He called me Double Towel, doing great, Double Towels, doing great, Double Towels, doing great. Um, Vince Russo, who's like a big name in the wrestling world. He wrote a lot of the major storylines in WCW and WWF at the time. He's the one that said, "Hey, can you dress a little nicer?" Because I just had my Impact shirt on and jeans, and so I started wearing those Cuba Vera shirts, those Cuban shirts and slacks. And on pay-per-view days, I wear like a tie. And so Vince Russo's like, "Yeah, can you dress a little nicer? You're doing really well." And so then that led to being the liaison. So after the show, they would have wrestlers you could pay to meet. They would pick a wrestler, and the wrestler would be in the ring after the show, and you could pay to have a meet and greet. And it was a third party camera company, Color Vision, who was the Universal third party camera. So I became a liaison since my job was pretty much done after the show. They're like, "Hey, can you walk the wrestlers down the ramp?" Because after the show, everybody's off the headsets. All production crew is off their headsets. So I would get the wrestler. When let's say if it was Rob Van Dam, they're like, they tell me early in the, "Hey, Rob Van Dam's going to be uh, um, your wrestler for the in ring, so make sure you get with him." So I'll go to RVD, Legend RVD, like, "Hey, I'm Gene, I'll be with you uh, for the meet and greet." All right, so then basically at the end of the show, I have to find the wrestler. RVD was always somewhere. They're like, "Oh, Rob is in his car doing his thing." I'm like, "Okay, that's his business. I don't need to know anything more, long as I know where he is by the time." I always had to find him, but when I found him, he's like, "Okay, I'm here." Right. So then I would go to, so when they would walk to the ramp, when they come down to the ring, they'd have to walk up a couple steps and then go up the slight incline and then down the ramp. So then I would peek my head up to one of the announcers for one of the B shows. Her name was SoCal Val. She was the announcer for the other shows. I'd give her the thumbs up, and she's like, "All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Rob Van Dam." So I'd walk him down the ring and then and kind of facilitate that. And then when he's done, I'm like, "All right, RVD, you're all done." So, so my favorite wrestlers. With all that said, my favorite wrestlers um, was Jeff Hardy, who I'm still friends with to this day. Um, Me and his wife end up hanging out almost all the time, and the kids. Jeff Hardy was fantastic with his fans, just amazing, just good energy. And one story in particular about Jeff Hardy, you know how you hear the term, "This person's so nice, they'll give the shirt off their back." I've seen Jeff Hardy do it. So this was he's doing the meet and greets, Jeff Hardy's a big name, the Hardy Boys, Team Extreme, um, and the Colorvision, the manager, his son was 13 years old at the time, was running the memory card back and forth, and then he was like, "Hey, can I get a Jeff Hardy shirt?" He's coming to me. This is while we're still doing the meet and greets, doing the photos. He's like, "Can I get a shirt?" I was like, "Well," I'm like, we get 50% off the merch table for Jeff. He's like, "Can I get the shirt that Jeff Hardy is wearing, like right now?" And I already kind of got to know Jeff a little bit, knowing he's a really cool guy. And I was like, "You know what? Why don't you ask him? He's a cool guy." So then he's like, "Okay." So then, all right, we're going through the pictures and we're wrapped up. And then, all right, Jeff, we're all done. And the kid looks at me, "Oh, yeah, go." And he's like, "Hey, Jeff, can I get the shirt you're wearing?" And Jeff kind of looks around, and I mean, the place kind of emptied out for the most part. And he's like, Jeff Hardy literally takes his shirt off and gives it to the kid, like Mean Joe Green in the Coca-Cola commercial from the '70s. "Now here, kid," and gives him. And I was like, "Oh my goodness, Jeff, amazing." My top stories. One of the top stories is Mick Foley, aka Mankind, Cactus Jack, Dude Love. One of the most iconic wrestlers of all time. This is something that only I saw, and I want to get his story out as much as possible. Very few people know the story I'm about to tell you here about how amazing Mick Foley is. So remember I told you how the wrestlers would walk up the steps a little bit, that incline, then down that ramp.
Uh-huh.
So and Mick Foley's a big name. So when they announced in the commercial break that Mick Foley was going to be the meet and greets, so many people bought tickets for that. So it was definitely a line out the door after the show. So anyway, so 30 minutes or an hour, whatever, before the show, I introduced myself. I'm like, "Hey, Mick, I'm Gene. I'll be with you for your meet and greet. So I'll show you where to go and all that." He's like, "All right, just let me know where." So then and I think he probably even wrestled. He might have did something. But anyway, so it's in the show. The production crew's cleared out. Most wrestlers are kind of, you know, packing their stuff up, getting ready to take the shuttle back to the hotel, whatever, or get the rides. And it's just me and Mick Foley backstage. and he's looking at it's maybe 4 steps to get up. I think it's called the gorilla position or gorilla. It's 4 steps. There's no handrail or anything, and he's looking at these 4 steps. Because I didn't give Val the thumbs up yet, but because he's looking, he's like, I don't know if I can make it up these steps because his body's been broken. Because he did a Hell in a Cell with Undertaker. He got thrown off of everything. He's broken so many bones in his body, it caught up to him. And he was like, I'm not sure if I can make it up these steps. And I was like, Mick, well, what we can do is we can walk around, go behind where the announcers tables are, and then I knew my way around the sound stage. I knew a way to navigate around to where he could make his way. That's usually where if there's like a surprise attack, wrestler coming from the back, they usually come from that way, so nobody sees them and they come. So I'm like, we come from that way, go around the ramp, walk beside the ramp, and then get into the ring. Like I could walk you around there, and then he's like, no, wait. He said, all those fans out there are expecting me to walk down this ramp, and I want to give that to them. So just give me a moment. Just give me a moment. I'm like, okay. And I stood there and watched him take the 4 steps. They were the most monumental 4 steps. It was almost like if you've ever seen the movie Creed, where he's running up the step with Rocky, and then Rocky, slowly, like I have like my hand, like I need to take care of him because I don't want Mick Foley falling on my watch, and then you know something permanent happens, and my conscience is I let something happen to a legendary wrestler I grew up with. So I had my body ready to fall or to you know you know jump on a grenade for Mick Foley. If he were to fall, my body is going to break his fall or something. But he didn't need my help. He walked up those 4 steps carefully. And I gave the thumbs up to SoCal Val. She's like, all right, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for the Hardcore Legends and stuff. And then once he got up that ramp, that that walk he did, everything went away. Once he got in front of the fans, I saw that in a lot of. I saw that in Hulk Hogan too. Hulk Hogan backstage kind of walk like the old man walk. As soon as they got in front of those fans, that all went away. And then as soon as they came back, then it went back. It was like Clark Kent Superman. It was like I think he knew once he got in front of the fans, he was good to go. And he got there, and I was like, wow, that's something that no one else saw but me. Like I had that moment with Mick Foley where he's like, no, I need to do this for the fans. And I feel like everything he did for the fans, and he has a good, apparently, one-man show. He got into stand-up comedy. I heard really great things about him. I'm sure he has like a million something stories. Um, and my third favorite wrestler, uh, but great story. A little bit behind the scenes. I'm not gonna name names uh, for this one. Protect the uh, whatever, break the innocent. But anyway, so I was backstage one day. Um, the crowd was filled. They didn't need any recruitment, so I was back in one of the trailers where you could watch the show. But I was charging up my phone at the time, and some of the wrestlers that were in there were like Abyss. I want to say Motor City Machine Guns, Chris Haven, Mr. Kennedy, who in the WWE is known as Mr. Kennedy in the WWE, but in TNA he's Mr. Anderson. He was in there, and this one wrestler who's very well known right now burst in and was complaining about management really loud. He was just upset at something, and I knew right then and there. I'm like, okay, I need to step away. I'm hearing things I should be hearing, and I was slowly trying to slink out of there, kind of like like Jurassic Park T-Rex. His sight is by movement, but I was trying to move out of sight and get out of there. And then he sees me, looks at me, he's like, "You need to get out of here right now." I'm like, "Yep." I took no offense to it. I'm like, "Yep." I unplugged my phone. I got out of there, and I just heard screaming, venting. Uh, the next day, the next tapings, I'm driving up to the sound stages, and Mr. Anderson, Kennedy, whatever he called, Mr. Anderson, Ken Anderson. I'm walking towards a breezeway, and he comes to me, shakes my hand. And the thing about wrestlers is all about shaking hands. That's like all the wrestlers. If you're backstage, everybody shakes everybody's hand, no matter who you are. It's a sign of respect. He comes up and shakes my hand. He's like, I want to apologize for what happened yesterday. I was like, oh, Ken, you don't have to apologize. No harm, no foul. I thought nothing of it. he's like, no, on behalf of my colleague, he could have handled that better. He didn't have to yell in your direction like that. So on behalf of my colleague, I want to apologize. And then he stuck his hand out again. And I was like, man. And then I noticed whenever Ken Anderson would interact with fans, whenever I had uh, him as my meet and greet, he was so funny. He had a like every single fan, he had a different interaction. He was not a robot at all. He had a different interaction, a different pose. His pose was doing this, and he was like an amazing guy. And and yeah, so those like my top three, and my honorable mention was Kurt Angle, Olympic gold medalist Kurt Angle. I had him as a meet and greet. He wasn't the most personable, but he was the most professional. He would sit in the chair. I'm like, hey, Kurt, I'm Gene. I'll be your meet and greet. And towards the end of the night, he was sitting in his chair. He was like, I'm going to sit in the chair. I'm not leaving until you come get me. And sure enough, true to his word, and when it was time come, Kurt was in that chair. I'm all right, Kurt. He's like, all right, let's do it. Boom, and get up there. He was more, I don't say methodical, but more like not as personable, but he's professional. Like we could always count on Kurt. I didn't have to search for him. I didn't have to. Hey, has anybody seen Kurt? Has anybody seen? Nope. He was in. He's like, I'm going to be here. And there was one time where I couldn't make it in time. He was like, I'll just go out. I already know what to do. I'm like, so at that point, it was kind of running itself. So Kurt Angle, the most professional, like he understood. Now this is my gig. This is my business. Is meeting the fans and all that. So yeah. So my time in TNA, you know, it helped build my confidence speaking because I was talking for so long, recruiting an audience on this megaphone and hyping the crowd up in the ring and meeting my favorite wrestlers, but as real people and just kind of seeing how celebrities act, famous wrestlers act in real life. And I got to meet, you know, incredible people. And that led to working on a Nickelodeon show. So my boss who was doing the audience coordinating, even though Nickelodeon Studios was closed at this time, this is 2005, 2006, they were rebooting Guts in 2008, summer 2008, called My Family's Got Guts. And my boss, who was the audience coordinator for TNA, she's like, hey, I'm the audience coordinator for the Nickelodeon show. I know you love Nick. She actually worked at Nickelodeon in the early 90s. She worked with Wayne Brady, which is amazing. But she was like, hey, I'm doing this Nickelodeon thing. You want to be my you want to work on it? I'm like, you already know the answer to that. So just like that, I got to work on My Family's Got Guts as an audience PA. And the warm-up host was a stand-up comedian named Mark Daniels, who you may know from the stand-up world. Did you know Mark Daniels?
Yeah, you interviewed him.
Yeah. So Mark
Yep.
Daniels was a warm-up host for Guts, and I'm like, wow, this guy's really good. And then a week or two into it, he was like, because he worked at Disney, still works at Disney. He was like, "Hey, Gene, have you done working at Disney? Have you seriously thought about working for Disney? You have a great personality, great voice to interacting with the audience members." And at the time, I'm like, Disney was not on my radar. I'm like, I heard how strict they were. I was like, thanks, no thanks. I heard about Disney, how strict they are, but I'm good at Universal. He's like, all right. I just thought I'd ask him. I won't bring it up anymore. Time went by. The show was done, and at Universal, I was doing the voice of Donkey. That was my finally got in as an actor at Universal, doing the voice of Donkey, doing my Eddie Murphy. Yeah, that's right, no Steve. Man, I've been a donkey in like 6 months. That was terrible. But anyway, so I was doing the voice of Donkey, but I wasn't like getting full time. I wasn't getting moving up like what I wanted to. And I remember Mark Daniels talking about Disney. So out of the blue, I'm like, "Hey, Mark, remember me? Remember you said I'd be good at Disney?" He said, "All right, send me a headshot resume," and then he sent it to casting people, and they loved Mark so much they brought me in a few times to audition for things before they found something for me. And I ended up emceeing one of the shows for 8 years, and 3 of those years I was the main MC for Walt Disney World, and I will always thank Mark Daniels for that. He's the one that put me on. Um, so I made sure I worked twice as hard because Mark Daniels didn't have to do that. He didn't have to put his name on the line for me, and he did. So I worked twice as hard. It ended up being a full time First time I got to be a full time performer was at Walt Disney World. I didn't even set out to work at Disney, but they ended up giving me more than Universal could give me. They treated me like a rock star. I got to be the MC, the street party. It's called the Move It, Shake It, Celebrate It. Turn it to Move It, Shake It, Dance It, Play It. I was the main MC from 2013, 2016. I got to do the warm up for the Christmas filming, which Mark got me into. He helped me out quite a bit in this. So yeah, I mean that's the cool thing about Orlando and its performers is we all help each other. So I always make sure I help any young performer coming up. If they have a good positive attitude, no matter what discipline they're in, odds are I know somebody, whether they're singer, dancer, actor, comedian, juggler, professional wrestler, stuntman, stunt women. Like I know people that are in these fields, so I make sure I pass that on. And the thing about Orlando, I love the community. It's not cutthroat. It's not like LA where everybody's kind of out on their own. We all help each other out, and it's a beautiful thing. That's why I love Orlando. I've been here for 17 years and love all the people here, and we all help each other out and support. Even now with this COVID thing, we all banded together and everybody's helping each other out, and still trying to help each other out. A lot of people doing virtual gigs. Um, my buddy who I did a trivia with, I used to host a trivia show. He was one of the first live stream trivia. He actually was a security for TNA Wrestling, was a wrestler himself, not on TNA, and then he became a full time trivia host here in Orlando. His name is Simon, Simon Time Trivia Show, and he became one of once the pandemic hit. He went to Facebook Live and started doing a trivia show on Facebook Live. So now me and my friends play his trivia. So if anything, I would like to promote him because he has some of the best trivia, just useless knowledge trivia. And on occasion he'll do a theme night like this Sunday. It's gonna be Marvel. Last week he did all cartoons, and then he did Disney before all horror movies. But usually it's general, not useless knowledge, making use of your useless knowledge. Because it used to be Simon and Gene trivia, and then I got busy with other work. I'm like, I gave him the show, and he just took off like a rocket. But yeah, but if you ever have a chance, the Simon Time trivia, put that on my Facebook. Get a team together and get a Facebook group together, and you put all your answers on your Facebook group, not on the live stream chat. And it's for bragging rights. You don't really win anything. So they ask you not to Google because what's the point if you're not winning anything? So yeah, that's I always support my friends. So I support it. It's like every other day. It's like Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. So give you something to look forward to because the days kind of blend together when you're not working. So the trivia is like, okay, oh, I know it's either Sunday, Tuesday, or Thursday with trivia. So it's kind of a nice little marking point in the week and a nice little getaway because he's very funny, very pop culture, yeah, and he's super funny. So yeah, the Simon Time Trivia Show. I would love to plug that. I should have asked you to plug that because that's like my best friend, and times are getting tight for him. But he's still just plowing through. Has his family with him, has his kids, and his fiance, and they're getting through it. And by making us laugh and you know entertaining us, because what we do is entertain us. Sometimes we forego our own needs as people to make sure other people are entertained because that's our outlet as well. As long as I'm making other people happy, then my needs can be met eventually. So as performers, we kind of have that in us make sure everybody else is having a good time before our own needs. But now this pandemic is showing like, okay, we might need to step back a little and take a break, and then find a way back into navigating the waters of this COVID thing with what we do as performers. Like, okay, now what? Now how do I do this? And so yeah, now that's the challenge. I'm seeing my friends wrestling again. A lot of my friends from TNA are now on NXT, and occasionally I'll watch that. And my comedian friends, I started back at the Improv. Ken Miller, I see him popping up here and there, and Marcus Crespo. And it's just it's good to see everybody is slowly trying to either get back to normal or just adjusting to the new normal and doing what they can until we could get back to normalcy or the new normal or adjust to whatever it is going on in the world. No matter
And
what's going on in the world, we still need to laugh or need at least an escape, a getaway, or a new perspective on things. And that's what we provide as performers, as artists, if you will.
indeed, and we have some viewers on that's watching. So if you'd like to jump in the comment section, and
Oh
we'll
yes,
talk with you and all that good stuff, and but be
absolutely.
nice to us and all that good stuff. And
You
let's
got
see.
some savages.
Indeed. Like my favorite RVD story that I have is like he visited my hometown in Pueblo, Colorado, and he was with ECW at the time,
Yes.
and so there's like Sabu and everybody that was there, and I had this sign that I made that said, "Please sign my sign," and I held it up, and they were like, "Holy crap, this is the coolest sign!" So all the pro wrestlers came up to me and they all signed my
Yes.
sign. It was so cool.
Yeah, it's so cool because backstage I would hear them talk about some signs and all that, and they will talk about it. One of them was like, "I'm gonna take the sign and rip it," and I'll see. Oh, I think ECW started the sign ripping because
Uh,
there was like no holds bar there, and I was just like, "They could rip your sign? What?"
yeah.
Yeah.
But it was nice of him for sure. Like Sandman was there and all those other guys. But
Oh, I'm sure you saw like Tommy Dreamer, Sandman,
yep,
Sabu, maybe New Jack.
I wish New Jack was there. But it was in when WWE bought ECW, but
Oh,
some of the old ECW guys were still wrestling for ECW, so they made their house show run, and so
yeah.
they some of them came up to me and signed my sign. So thank goodness for those guys. So it was awesome.
Yes.
I have pictures, so remind me after the show I'll show you my photo album on Facebook with all the ECW guys. I was a bit bigger
Okay.
back then, so it was like I had my WWE Vendetta. I think it was Vendetta shirt, but it was like Big Show versus Kurt Angle versus
Yep.
Brock Lesnar at the main event in at the Pepsi Center. But it was
Oh,
pretty awesome. But Undertaker was riding; he was like the American Badass at the time. He
American
was riding his
Badass.
motorcycle, so it was way back when. But it's cool that
Yeah.
we talked about horror and Impact Wrestling because when I was like graduating, almost graduating college, I was a journalism major, which you got
Yes.
into.
A little bit.
I reached out to TNA Impact and I said, "Here's my resume. I would love to take on this internship from broadcasting," but they never got back to me. So
Yeah.
instead, I went to my horror roots, and I said, "All right, I'm gonna write my favorite master of horror on the other side of the country,
Oh,
and see if he would reach out to me back." And sure enough, he did, and I got to be his
who
apprentice for 4 years.
who was it?
Clive Barker.
Clyde Barker?
Yeah.
Hellraiser?
Hellraiser and Candyman and Nightbreed.
Candy.
And
I
yeah.
actually have one of his books of blood. I used to read his books.
Oh, very cool. I gotta show. I'll send you my press kit. So you can see the whole story. And it's and he thanked me in Nightbreed, and that's all I ever wanted. I would out of Hollywood was like my name in the movie credits, and he thanked me in there. I was like, oh, that's like the dream come true. It's
That's
so
it.
yeah. So like just check that off my favorite list. So that's like my second favorite movie of all time is Nightbreed, the director's cut, like
Oh,
2014. Because they
okay, you know
really
what? I'm put that on my Netflix DVD queue.
absolutely like they put like 40 extra minutes in there,
Oh, then
and
I'm yes.
indeed, so I highly recommend that. So yeah, it's an incredible journey. So I'll send you like my press kit, and then you'll see how like everything unfolded. I'm like, this is nuts. It's pretty
Clive
wild.
Barker, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
You mentioned Masters of Horror. I love horror movies, and I think he even directed a Masters of Horror. You ever watch that show, Masters of Horror?
yeah, with Mick Garris.
Mick Garris, yeah,
Yep, yep. He did Valerie on the Stairs was one of his stories with Tony Todd and Christopher Lloyd in that one.
yeah.
And that's like one of my favorite stories. And Heikel's Tale is the other one that they used, one of Clive's stories. So those are the two that were in there.
Yeah, the cool thing about Books of Blood, I'm sorry, Books of Blood, Masters of Horror was so I was getting the this was must have been 2007, 8, whatever. I was getting the Netflix DVD of Masters of Horror. This before streaming, and the awesome thing about Masters of Horror, even though it was only a show, their DVD was full of extras like a movie. So they had featurettes and commentary of every single episode. Uh, and my favorite one was the one that actually it was too hot for TV, too hot for Showtime, and it was Takashi Miike, the Japanese writer, where he had one that was just a bit too graphic that they had to just release it right to DVD. Because at the time I was really into J horror, Japanese horror. I got into that for a while, Japanese and Korean horror. I was getting a bunch of those through the Netflix DVD service, and uh, but uh, but yeah, that was bit much for the American viewing audience. But yeah, whenever I see Clive Barker's name, though, I'm like, okay, I'm in for something good here because Hellraiser, Candyman, and all that. That's like iconic. Like whenever I visit Chicago doing the boat shows or anything, I always have the Candyman theme in my head. Uh, just think of Candyman and funny thing is the commentary on that is amazing because
I
I never
agree.
thought about Candyman about how how back in the days the horror movies were set in a castle in Transylvania and it was dangerous, don't go to there. Count Dracula's there, but how do they put that in the modern era? It's usually the ghetto. You don't want to stop in there. You don't want to side in Orlando, Pine Hills, or Cabrini Green, or South Central Compton. Became like the new you know, castle of Dracula. Like where's it nobody really wants to go to, and just how do we make a horror story in there? And that was just like groundbreaking. And the commentary, Candyman is really good. So, but Clyde Barker, man, how cool is that? Man?
Indeed, I was so stoked when I got to be his apprentice, and I only expected to last like a summer, but he goes, "I love you, kid. Come back." And I was like there for like 3 more years, so it's pretty awesome.
What exactly do you do, like as an apprentice?
We had a lot of heart to heart conversations, which was like just valuable, and I helped build sets for his Imagining Man exhibit. So that
What?
was pretty neat. Yeah, it's his one of his books that's out there. And I escorted him to all his book signings while I was with him. So that was fun. And we went to Comic Con together, and I got to like make sure the line was all okay and everything.
Yeah.
And it was so long that they had to like split it and move it to another section. And so but he signed everyone and talked to everyone. And he was just
Yes.
that dude. He goes,
Yes.
I
Yes.
know I only got an hour here, but I'm gonna talk to every single fan and like personalize everything for them. And it was so gnarly of him to do that. And I was like, and I just loved that about him. And I got to see the Book of Blood premiere with him, and that was pretty neat. And he didn't get to spend the last night in the Comic Con, and he goes, "All right, kid, you can have my hotel room for the last night." And I'm like,
What?
"Cool, yeah."
What?
So
Ah.
I felt like a king when I was like in his like hotel suite. I was like so cool.
That's so cool that like the people that we kind of grew up watching or got to be influenced by, they end up becoming friends or even peers, and you get to see them. And I'm glad we have these stories of you know of the good of, hey, this person's really, whenever somebody asks, hey, what's Jeff Hardy, like Jeff Hardy's a cool guy, and he literally the shirt off his back, we'll talk to you about anything you have about with Clive Barker. It's like I love we get to see that side of icons of their respective fields, and that's why I always love the business we're in of entertainment.
I agree. They're like good folks, and like everyone always like sees him as the horror guy, but he also writes children's books. Like The Thief of Always is one of my favorites.
Okay,
And
yeah.
so I recommend that one, like the young adult series, like Abrat. I worked on I was a PA for his Abrat trailer, so that was pretty neat. Absolute Midnight. So I'll send you the trailer to that. You'll be like, oh, this is so cool. I gotta read these books. So it's
Yes.
all good stuff. But yeah, Clive was an awesome guy, and a lot of heart to heart conversations. And he sent a tweet about me in 2009 that would launch my writing career. And
What?
yeah, it was nuts. Like that's the only reason why I got on Twitter, because like he tweeted about me, and he was like,
uh,
Sreth is a gentleman and much loved in my household. I hold him in the highest regard. And I'm like, Clive, you know what you done started, right? This
you
is
just started.
all hell's gonna break loose for me. And sure enough, like I became a concert journalist out in LA, and like they kept on, like I wrote about like a lot of the famous bands out there and like
Of
photographed
course.
them, and they were like, all right, we loved what you did with these people, but we don't represent them, but here's all our information, come write about our people. and I'm like Cypress Hill and Deftones
Cypress.
and Soundgarden and like
What?
Tech Nine, like all these shows I'm like
Uh,
I was getting for free, and I'm like, this is so cool. And like
oh man.
I was living on the Sunset Strip so much that I got the nickname the Sultan of the Sunset Strip.
So the Sunset Strip, yes.
And like I would wear my Wu Tang pants with all the Wu Tang logos on there, like RZA and Jizza and Ghostface and everything. And like even if I didn't have to cover a show, they'd be like, "All right, we know your pants, we know your face, we know your beanie. Come on into the show." And they're like, "House guest," and I'm like, "Cool." And I'm like, I got
Yes.
to catch this show for free, and I didn't even have to write about it. So it's so cool.
Yes. Man, one of my favorite shirts that I think I lost somewhere in Tampa. It was a Wu Tang shirt, but it was Homer Simpson with his woohoo, and
Uh-huh.
it was in the Wu Tang symbol. So the
Uh-huh.
woohoo Tang Clan, and
That's a
I
pretty cool
wore that
shirt.
shirt a lot. And then I think I was doing a boat show in Tampa, and I guess I sat in my hotel somewhere, and I'm like, oh no, and I don't think they sell that shirt anymore. But yeah, man.
Man, that's pretty. We got some really cool stories, and I'm so glad Marcus told me to interview you and all that good stuff. And so we'll continue on. And you mentioned that you and your pal did trivia, and you were the former trivia host for Earth Trivia
Yes.
back in 2008 and 2010. How did you get involved with those with that?
Oh yeah. So the trivia. So it started with me and my buddy Bill. So this must have been let's see, 2006. I want to say. So for a brief stint, I had a 9 to 5 at Universal Studios. The summer 2006. I used to be an interviewer. I used to hire people from Universal back when you could walk in, fill an application to get a immediate interview. I was an interviewer. I was just testing the waters, and and I got in because I was doing that orientation tour guide stuff, and I was trying to figure out. So I got a 9 to 5, and 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 I was going to TNA wrestling, and I remember in the audience I had met um, just a fan, became a friend named Bill. He was the head of the preview center where they would preview NBC shows. You would get your input on, hey, what do you think about the show? So I became friends with this guy, um, and and then he was like, hey, there's this uh, restaurant I go to. They do trivia, the Curtis Earth trivia. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll go to that. And build useless knowledge, and it became like a regular thing. It was like, okay, it was like, no, this must have been before. This was 2005 because and then I got into HR a year later. But and then my buddy, so the Simon Time Trivia, his real name is John, but my buddy Simon, I was like, Simon is his wrestling name. Simon Says. So, but now his trivia is Simon Time. But so if I say John or Simon, it's the same guy. And Marcus knows him because Marcus was big into wrestling and he knows who my friend is. So we're all connected, which is crazy. But anyway, Simon started uh, joining us, and then Simon realized Curtis has a show near him because Simon was out in Kissimmee. And there's at a biker bar called Another Round, and it was a true biker bar. There was literally motorcycles on the sidewalk. It was smoky in there, and Curtis was doing a trivia, but he said it wasn't doing so well. And I remember Bill had mentioned wanted to do trivia, but I never thought anything of it. But Simon was like, "Oh, that's a pretty good idea." And Simon had brought it up to Curtis. Curtis was like, "Yeah, well, maybe, maybe." And then one night it was just me and Simon at Another Round, and Curtis was like, "You know what? I'm about to give this up, but if you guys can make this work, this could be yours. I'm gonna give you a shot." So literally gave us all his questions, and it was just me and Simon. This was in 2008, I want to say February 2008 or 2009 maybe. And me and Simon ended up having this chemistry. Like I was like the good guy, he was the bad guy because in the wrestling he was the heel. He was a manager turned wrestler, but he could always talk that heel talk. He would cut the best promos out of anybody, and he would cut promos on the crowd. And Curtis was like, if you can make it on this biker bar, I'll get you more gigs. And it felt like a video game. It felt like levels. So we started out at a smoky biker bar. Uh, uh, it almost felt like the Blues Brothers with chicken wire and all that. And um, but we made it through there, and then he got us a new restaurant opening called Stooges. It was a Three Stooges themed restaurant, brand new. The owner knew about trivia, knew about Curtis. Curtis like, hey, I got these guys, Simon and Gene. So he sent us out and to try to get people. That didn't quite work out. It was still new restaurant. Restaurants are hard to run, first of all, and it just wasn't quite getting to people, and we didn't have that following yet. But Curtis did like we did. Then he got us our next level, which was an established restaurant at a place we played already, which was I think is Gators Dockside, uh, and which is Gators Dockside. Oddly enough, one of the waitresses who took care of us was actually ended up being one of Tiger Woods' mistresses
Oh
back in the
no.
day, and we didn't even know at the time. And she wasn't even like glammed up. She just looked like an average. She did not look like like a hot model at all. She was just regular. She was great at her job. She always took care of us. But a couple of years after the fact, I remember looking at a magazine rack, I think Vanity Fair, and I saw like hey, that kind of looks like Mindy. That can't be her. It looked all glammed up. And sure enough, I was like, oh my gosh, Simon, remember that waitress that took care of us? She took care of Tiger Woods. I'm like, oh my goodness. But so yeah, so me and him were just kind of making the rounds, doing all these different restaurants and bars uh, and while I was working at Universal doing TNA, so I would literally come home from Universal, change, and then go out and host trivia, uh, and just but I was working around the clock. Felt like it until it got to the point where I'm like, you know what? I said, Simon, I'm going to give you the show. I have a lot on my plate. He's like, are you sure? I feel like I'm kicking you out. I'm like, no, no, you have it. I have literally TNA, Universal, I and then Disney was starting up, and I had like a lot on my plate. So, and we were splitting the money too. So, it was so funny because he was not good with money. Like I'm good with money, but he wanted to spend his money right away on something. I was like, we need to save our money so we could buy, an iPod so we can have our music on there, and we could use this laptop. And he's always buying things. I was like, we got to save it. But eventually, he got good at money, saving money, and he ended up pretty much buying like a house off of trivia money. He had become one of the top paid trivia hosts in town. He became Curtis Earth's right hand man. He was doing radio shows. He's still doing podcasts and all that, but he shot up like a rocket.
Dang.
And I always will support him. Like we came up like together, and now we're doing our own respective things. And so it's always good to see when your friends are succeeding.
Indeed, absolutely. And so we'll talk about your current jobs at the moment, which is one of them is you work in the entertainment at Universal Orlando Resort, with Halloween Horror Nights 13, and you also did the animated Street Star character escort. What do you do with those?
Okay, yeah. So remember how I did Halloween in 2003? So and I'm like, all right, no more, no more. Uh, well, after Macy's, no more seasonal gigs. Get right into entertainment. I got a Nickelodeon, and then Nickelodeon closed, and then I got in to Fear Factor. But then I was only part time at all these. Like I was never full time at anything Universal. Like to this day, my 17 years Universal, I've never been full time. I've been full time at Disney, but never full time Universal because I will only accept a full time performing role. But I had enough work. I got trained in so many different venues. I was working almost every day anyway, and one of them was escorting the characters. So at the time, if you were trained in an actor role, which was like I was trained in Donkey, now this isn't the case, but you could be an attendant for the celebrity lookalike. So all the attendants, because mostly bodyguards wearing like suits and all that, for the Marilyn Monroe lookalikes, the Betty Boop lookalikes, was mostly like bodyguards, and they usually use actors, even though it's not an acting role. It's it's you know it's uh, it's not like a character attendant where you have to form a line and all that. They just kind of are walking and just a male presence there, so guys don't grope the girls, which we never had issues with. Um, but then when I was working at Fear Factor, this had to have been wow 2006 or 7 when they brought Halloween back to the Universal side. I was working at Fear Factor, and they're like, "We're gonna use that stage for the Bill and Ted show." They're like, "We're gonna train you guys in the animated escort as well." So then I got a chance to escort the Scooby Doo's and the Dora Explorers. At the time, we had Rugrats, and all that. So that's how I got into just attending to that. But I'm like I still like the face characters more than the animated characters. So then I actually went over when I was escorting Betty Boop over at Islands Adventure. They share a break area with the Marvel heroes, and then I remember they needed an escort at Marvel, and I was the only one there. I was trained for Boop and animated, but not Marvel. And they're like, "What you gonna learn now?" So then I learned on the fly, and it's funny because the person that actually trained me a couple years later, she left and did her acting thing, came back. I ended up having to train her because a lot has changed since then. So that was kind of a cool full circle moment. I had to train my trainer, escorting the Marvel superheroes, and so I was doing that, and then I got into Disney. So then, okay, no more escorting, all Disney. And then my Disney contract that ended in 2016 full time. I was still on call, so I'm like, all right, swallow my pride, go back, and hat in hand, went back to all my Universal venues, Fear Factor, escorting them. Hey guys, I'm available for anything. My contract's ending for Disney. I got humbled again. I was up at the top. I got the taste that sweet kind of rock star life, and then I got humbled. But I'm like, I'm not too proud to work. I mean, work is work, and I'm still in entertainment. Still I do. So I went to entertainment, and then in 2016, I'm like, let me audition for Halloween stuff again. But I was gonna audition for an actor role more than a character role, so I auditioned for Bill and Ted role. And that's the story in itself because I had auditioned for Bill and Ted back in 2003, but I didn't know it was a dancing show and I couldn't dance. So I'm like, okay, I embarrassed myself once, fooled me once. But then some years went by, I'm like, let me try it again. One of the Bill and Ted writers a couple years earlier apparently wrote a role with me in mind and tried to get me to audition for it, but I thought nothing of it. And he's like, I wrote a role for you and you didn't show up. And I'm like, I might not do that again. I was like, oh man, I kind of squandered it because I was at Disney full time. And but then he already found his black actor that he liked, and the guy that he found was amazing. I mean, better dancer than me. So and actor. So no harm, no foul. Somebody else got the chance and excelled at it. Um, but I auditioned for the Bill and Ted show. Didn't get it, but a lot of us Bill and Ted rejects got a chance to audition for this experimental virtual reality escape room Universal was doing. It was a separate charge, an upcharge event. It was in the old Nickelodeon, now Blue Man Soundstage, but they were using paying us as actors, not as characters, and I got a chance to be an actor for this experiment. They haven't done it since, where it was an escape room slash experience where we weren't scaring people. We were giving you information, but we were giving you coded information. So every information we're giving you was a code on how to escape. And then there's a VR. They made us. They called it the virtual reality house, but the whole house is not VR. Just one element of it, but it was marketed as a VR house, and but it wasn't. Uh, but I did that in 2016, and then I reconnected with a buddy of mine named Rob. As performers, we kind of talk about, hey, what are your goals as an actor? And me and Rob were always talking. One of my goals, besides Nickelodeon, is I love traveling. One thing I miss about the Navy was traveling. And I'd always be envious of any of my friends going on tour. Like, oh my God, I just got off this tour. And I'm like, what's it like? And they're like, oh my God, it's one city to the next. I'm like, I want to do that. I want to go, especially where there's mountains. I love mountains. Mountains are my happy place. Living in Florida, everything's flat. So anytime I see mountains, I'm from Stone Mountain, Georgia. Lived in Seattle. You still camping in the mountains. And I feel like I need to go back to the mountains, but I want to travel. So then that was like my ultimate goal was to travel. I don't know how I was gonna do it, but so me and my buddy Rob were talking. Rob was like, "Man, I want to travel too." That's what my Rob was. Um, he worked at Universal. He's a Grinch, and he worked at Disney. Uh, uh, did like a push the talking trash can. He being like a DJ and got me into DJing a little bit. I got to DJ a little bit at Disney because of Rob. That's another story if we get into. But anyway, after we did that Halloween Horror Nights, so this was 2016. So November of 2016, Rob was called me or texted me. He's like, "Hey, remember that time you said you wanted to travel?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, I got in as an MC for the Aggressive Boat Show tour. They need another MC for the other leg of the tour. can I give them the information? I was like, yeah, of course, yeah, yeah, right, yeah. So he did. I get almost a call next day. They're like, yeah, send us a headshot, resume, and a video of you emceeing. Now I have a demo reel now, but I didn't have a demo reel, so I'm like, what? Do I, but there is a thing on YouTube of me emceeing on the Cinderella Castle stage. I was introducing. There was these kids that was on the Ellen show, the Detroit Academy Arts and Science Choir, where they had a viral clip of singing "Pharrell's Happy," and they got to sing the Castle stage. So I got to be their MC. Well, it's on YouTube, so I was able to send that uh, to them, and they were like, "Oh, okay, that's great." So got a first interview went well, and they're like, for the company, the promo staffing out of Miami. So like, all right, the client is Match Marketing based out of Denver, Colorado. If they like it, then you're in, and then they send information, and they're like, "Yeah, you like them." Next thing I know, I'm on a plane to Cleveland, Ohio, and I was just like, "Oh my God!" This was 2 months later, like January of 2017. I was like, "Holy shit!" Oh, I, I'm actually getting paid to fly somewhere. The Progressive Boat Show tour. It was time Cleveland, Nashville, Baltimore, Miami. Those are my four cities. And my buddy Rob had the six city tour, and I'm like, this is the coolest thing. I'm getting paid to travel. And at the time, I didn't know what they want because I didn't have a script. So when I got to Cleveland, the IX Center, I was like, what is it you guys actually want me to do? They're like, we just want you to get people to come on our footprint. That's what they call, the convention space and footprint. Um, okay. So then I just took, well, you know how some gigs just use all of what you learned over the years? This is literally everything from TNA wrestling, because basically I was trying to get people to come to wrestling and say, hey guys, well, welcome to come to the carnival barking. I was doing that for years with TNA wrestling. And then my MC skills for Disney. They're looking for family friendly, high energy, and I was the MC for a street party at Walt Disney World. Uh, and and then I have to do like some trivia questions with some of the boat captains. So it combined like all my skill sets all in one, and I was loving it. I was like, "This is okay." By my new, and then my in the back of my head, I'm like, "This marketing company, Match Marketing, based out of Colorado. Man, I hope one day I get to go to Colorado, do a gig for them, like where I can see mountains." And sure enough, last 2019, November 2019, uh, uh, this Match Marketing group, they're like, they put together uh, this Christmas thing in Beaver Creek Ski Resort, and they were looking for a new MC. And since I was already MCing for the Progressive Show, since I was somebody they knew, you know, I just had to send my demo reel to some of the other people. But and next thing I'm on Thanksgiving Day, I'm flying to Denver, Colorado, taking the shuttle up to the mountains, and I literally almost teared up. I'm like, it feels like things that like I think about in the back of my head that I want to happen ends up happening. It's just, well, this is my Forrest Gump luck. I'm like, I would love to perform in Colorado in the mountains. And I was literally in the mountains. It was a quick. I flew in on Thanksgiving Day. The gig was the next day, day after Thanksgiving, and then I flew out the next afternoon, evening. But but yeah, so I got to live my dream, and not only traveling, which I love doing, and being an MC, I got to do it in the mountains. So yeah, I felt like I've pretty much done everything I wanted to do and more, and now I feel like I'm enjoying an early retirement. You
Indeed.
know,
And
yeah.
I love Colorado. I can't wait to move back for sure. So it's been I love the mountains. And let's see here. You still work in entertainment with Universal Studios Orlando as well
Yes,
since 2003. What are some of your favorite stories from Universal Studios Orlando besides the one that we've talked about?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, just being a Universal, just in general. One of my favorite stories was at Nickelodeon Studios. So, so by the time I got to Nickelodeon, uh, they weren't filming. Oh, so I got two. I'll give you two favorite stories. Uh, they weren't filming as much by the time I got there. It was kind of like a skeleton of his former self. So this other sound stages kind of empty and all that. But but I remember one day just in between shows, I was walking around the sound stages and I saw Olmec from Legends of the Hidden Temple just sitting in the middle of this empty soundstage, just this big rock, just sitting there, just waiting to get shipped out somewhere. I forgot where, but I'm just like, oh my god, this is iconic rock. I got to walk around Olmec, between shows. So that was one that. But my favorite though, uh, which is a story I don't get to tell often, which I'm glad you kind of asked. So um, So one of the things that I did not know about Universal and Nickelodeon, but I guess enough time has passed now I can tell the story of. So I worked at the Universal Nickelodeon side, not production. I didn't know they weren't the same thing. I didn't realize Nickelodeon production, like the filming, like the Clarissa all that, the Double Dare, What Would You Do, that was separate from Universal's game lab, the game testing or the studio tour. I thought it was all one big umbrella. So I didn't know better, but I remember when I got there, it was the coolest. First of all, I got to make slime. That was one of my favorite things was making slime. Like, oh my god, I get to make slime. This is at the time they were like, oh, it comes from the earth, from the slime geyser. It's natural. But they gave us the rest. But I got a chance to make slime in the Gat Kitchen, the same place. So the only time we crossed paths or crossed over with production was in the Gat Kitchen. So where we made our slime and our pies is where production made their stuff. So we had one side of the kitchen. They were cool though. So I was like, okay, this is cool. I'm in the actual kitchen where the messes are made. So that and then they're doing a short-lived show on Nickelodeon called Splat. It was only up for 2 seasons, and I went and got to know the host. The host, Rockman Johnson. There was Valerie, Austin, and Courtney. There were Rockman was the host. Valerie's red team, Austin yellow team, Courtney green team, and it was this first of its kind interactive game show where you could watch the show live, and I think you could go online or call in, but you could be on whichever team, and whatever the in studio team did would accrue points or call in or do online, and whichever team won, that audience got slime. They shot slime out of cannons, and that was the winner. Well, anyway, I got a chance to hang out with the host because I would go back there all the time because I'm like, well, I work at Nickelodeon, and they were all new, so they would let me in their dressing room, and so I got to hang out with Nickelodeon hosts, which they weren't famous, but at the time they were. And I was like, oh my god, I'm hanging out with Nickelodeon hosts. I mean, it was literally a dream come true. We would hang out at City Walk and all that, and but one day I was they knew side note, so they knew I could juggle. Like I would juggle backstage for them, being silly. I think I was showing Valerie how to juggle or something. But anyway, I was waiting in line uh, to watch the show because I just got off work um, and they pulled me out. They were like, "Gee, you're a juggler, right?" I'm like, yeah. They're like, we have a say. Oh, they will pull one member out from each team to do something, and whoever wins the points of the team. They're like, we're gonna pick somebody to juggle, and they pretty much picked me as a ringer. So, but here's the thing, though, I had a tough choice to make. They were like, okay, Gene, which side do you want to sit on? Do you want to be on Valerie's team, Austin teams, or Courtney's team? And they're all three looking at me like, yeah, Gene, who you gonna pick? I'm like, well, no, you can't do that to me, but I think I'm gonna pick a Valerie because she's super pretty, Latina, super friendly, and Austin's like, oh, all right, and Courtney's whatever. But anyway, um, but yeah, so they picked me and then picked two random guys out of the audience, and I remember it was uh, during like the election times, it'd be like the Demosplatic uh, convention, whatever, and Rockman was running for the Demosplatic convention, whatever. Uh, and I remember juggling and just whoever could juggle the longest without dropping. Of course, I did longest, and then I won it. Rockman was like, "Jake, you just won the juggler contest. How do you feel? I'm like, it feels great. But I got too close to it. It was a part of the bit, and his Secret Service was kind of escorting me off. The Secret Service agents were actually production guys, but yeah. So I got a chance to be on a Nickelodeon game show juggling, and then I ended up getting slimed, uh, shot out of a cannon on the show to help my team win. So that was one of my coolest, fun stories from Universal is being on that show, getting slimed, actually getting to be on a segment.
Indeed,
Yeah.
that's pretty awesome. We have some more viewers on watching, and so if you have questions about Gene's career in Universal and Disney and Halloween Horror Nights and TNA wrestling, jump in on the comments, and we'll talk about we'll bring you into the fold too. But be nice
Yes.
for sure. Indeed, and you
Yeah.
also worked in entertainment at NBC Universal to this day since 2003. What
Yeah.
are some of your favorite stories from NBC Universal?
I mean, it's all one big company. I mean, NBC Universal is Universal, but uh, another production. Okay, well, I'm glad you said NBC. So remember how I told you I worked on My Family's Got Guts,
Uh,
uh, summer 2008. So we had our wrap party at well now it's the NBC Grill at City Walk. It used to be NASCAR Cafe. Um, but on a wrap party, um, we got to meet Mark Summers. My hero was there, and I got to meet him with Mark Daniels. And Mark Daniels, they love Mark. They're like, Mark, we're gonna do something with you. And even Mark Summers was. I saw him go to Mark Daniels. Was like, you got something. You're really good. So I've seen that happen. So another cool production story. So not just with Mark Daniels. So who got the Mark Summers was like, yep, you got it. I watched Mark Summers give Mark Daniels, that rub. But a couple years ago, maybe some years ago, when they filmed season one of Family Feud at Universal, one of the guys I did Donkey with, a guy named Ruben Irvin, who's now famous now. He's Steve Harvey's personal warm up. Wherever Steve Harvey goes, Ruben goes. Whether it's doing the Miss Universe, Family Feud, Steve Harvey show, whatever, Ruben's his warm. Well, he started actually at Universal, and Ruben is not a stand-up comedian, but he's a funny guy, and he's a DJ as well too, and he's like our funniest donkey ever. But I remember my boss, who I work with at TNA Wrestling and Nickelodeon, she was an audience coordinator for the day for Family Feud. So I remember I went to go watch an episode just to watch Family Feud, and I saw like Ruben and I'm like, look at Ruben's up there. Yeah, he was like a true warm up, telling jokes and all that, and not just me getting people to scream and being a cheerleader. I'll say occasional funny things, but not like stand up comedian type. But anyway, uh, I remember Steve Harvey was like, "Hey, Ruben, I got this." You go to the back, and I remember Steve Harvey saying, "Ruben is one of the best warm up hosts I've ever seen, and this is a legendary king of comedy, Steve Harvey." Giving my friend like Ruben helped train me as donkey. He was one of my. I had two trainers, and Ruben was one of them, and a good friend. And he's getting like the rub of Steve Harvey. Like Ruben, I was like in the room where Steve Harvey is like, he's gonna go wherever I go. Sure enough, true to his word. And then that same day, my boss was like, "Hey, do you want to work on the set of Family Feud tomorrow?" I was even expecting that, but I'm like, "Okay, sure." Next thing I know, I'm filling out paperwork backstage at the old Nickelodeon studios there, and then I'm recruiting an audience for Family Feud, and then I got to see my buddy Ruben live his best life on that stage, and it's just like, man, this is why I'm here. This production, Universal production, and get to see my friends live their dream. And then on occasion, I get to do my thing. I mean, this is a good thing. Like, I'm not too proud to work in an assistant role or support role. Like, the more you can do, the more work you'll get. So I don't mind working behind the scenes. I can, do both. I can do behind the scenes, or I could be your MC, your host. I'm comfortable with both. I'd rather perform, but I don't mind. Like, I put the equal amount as work, whether I'm performing or if I'm assisting. Like, I don't slack off my assisting. Like, I take pride in my work. Us old guys say, whatever you do, be good at it, put pride in it. So I always, put pride in my work. And Universal, 17 years. Disney, I did 8, and Disney, even though I'm not with them anymore, like I'll still audition for Disney. If like I didn't have a falling out with Disney, like I still have a good relationship with like everybody. Like didn't have a falling out. Like TNA left for Canada. Disney is well when is going on there, but still in good terms with Disney. Still in good terms with everybody. So
And
everything else is waiting on the green light to get back to it. But still have my headshot. It's funny, my headshot, which is my Facebook profile pic. You were talking about black don't crack. My my headshot is from 2008. 2008 when I was going out for Universal Singapore to be Donkey. Uh, and I haven't really changed my look. like I was 30. I'm now 42, and I'm still have the same headshot because my look. I mean, now I have glasses, but it's mostly for like driving. I can see up close, not far. But I took that headshot. The story behind that, like the picture you see on my Facebook, um, my headshot. Uh, so when I told you I was kind of disenchanted a bit at Universal Donkey, uh, I was auditioning for Universal Singapore. One of the guys like, hey, they're looking for donkeys. You should go out for it. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. I want to travel. I want to travel. I haven't been to Singapore since I got out of Navy because in Navy I was going to all the Asian countries, Thailand, Singapore, Hong Kong, South Korea. But I was like, I want to go overseas. I can do it with entertainment. So, uh, but I didn't have an updated resume or a headshot. Um, so the cool thing is at TNA Wrestling, we have professional photographers, and they had a studio. And the studio they had was at the back of the old Nickelodeon studios. So one of the audio guys was like, "I could take your headshot for you." So the background of my headshot, it's all white background. That's the same background that TNA used for the trading cards for some of the
oh,
performers. Yeah, that's my background. So, or the background of my headshot, it was where they did the trading cards for TNA Wrestling.
that's pretty cool. They say black
Yeah.
don't crack, and they say Asians don't raisin. So we're really
Asians don't
fortunate.
raise it. That's the truth. That is the truth. Yeah. Yeah, I must say I get it from my mom. My mom looks young. When people see my mom together, they think like brother and sister. Like it's definitely runs in the family. And, uh, but my dad though, before he passed, my dad he looked every bit. But my dad did some hard living though. He was doing like the drinking and smoking, and I mean he cleaned up towards the last few years of his life. But my mom straight edge, clean. I think that's probably what it was. Is just low stress life. Well, she had a lot going on, but she definitely gave me the good genes, if you will, for especially in entertainment. The youthful look of me being an MC, especially at Disney. For me being, one of the older MCs, and the MC is supposed to be like this young, hip, guy, and here I am, in my late 30s, and people thought I was in my 20s, so, but
And
it's just crazy how this business works out.
most definitely. We have some more viewers in here too, and again,
Oh,
so they got more. So if, as I mentioned earlier, jump into the chat box and interact with us. And if you want to talk about TNA wrestling and Halloween Horror Nights with Gene and Universal Studios and Disney, go for it. But be
traveling.
nice and traveling. Be nice to us and all that good
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm I'm a, I'm a food. My favorite things is traveling. I'm a foodie, so every city I go to, I would try whatever like the local uh, thing or whatever the city was known for. And my buddy, who's actually a singer, he used to sing at Disney when an acapella singer, a guy named Sean Garrity. He's like, "Gene, you do all this traveling. There's an app I wanted to, and this app changed my life. It's called TV Food Map. Pretty much every restaurant that's been on the Food Network in your area, it lets you know." And when Sean told me about that, I remember I was at Universal and he's going in because he's learning the Jimmy Fallon, the ragtime gals. He was like, you to travel, you should do this. I was like, I love that idea. So sure enough, I go to a city, TV Food Map app. It will tell you all the places on the Food Network from whether Man versus Food or Diners, Drive-ins, or Best Thing I Ever Ate, or Food Paradise. And So I've had some crazy foods in my travels. Some in a good way. Like all the crazy foods I've had, pretty good. But like it's Cleveland, I had barbecue spaghetti, which was unreal.
Indeed.
And,
My hometown of Pueblo is known for their sloppers.
oh, what's
And
that?
it's like
Slapper.
I used to eat it, but I can't do it anymore because my stomach can't handle it. But it
Oh
was still
yeah.
delicious. But
What is?
it's open burgers that they have, and then they put green chili and slop it all over it, and then you put like oyster crackers on top of it, and they serve it with fries, and it's just so delicious.
It's a burger?
Yeah, and
What?
you have to eat it with a fork because it's so massive, so it's really good.
Oh my god! With
So
green chilies, oyster crackers.
yep, beef
It,
like patties and with cheese and like it's you gotta
what?
once you go back to Beaver Creek in Colorado, you gotta go and try a Pueblo slopper because there's nothing like it. So
Okay. Yes.
most definitely.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that.
Indeed, I recommend. There's two restaurants that do very well. The Gray's Course Tavern is very well known for it, and the Sunset Inn is pretty awesome for it. But Cactus Flower, there are just so many great restaurants in Pueblo that you gotta go and eat them
Yes.
all. It's fantastic. So,
I'm
indeed,
I'm that guy. Like if you tell me to go somewhere, I will literally go to that place and try whatever it is. Uh, my friend, same guy, he says, hey, if you're gonna go to Baltimore, you gotta try the Sweet Baby Jesus. I'm like, okay. I looked up Sweet Baby Jesus, and it was only like a 10-minute Uber ride from the hotel. Man, it was this big plate of hash browns with uh, uh, with Maryland crab meat in it, 4 eggs over easy, Old Bay seasoning over everything, and I think bacon was in it. And Sweet Baby Jesus, it was a right name for that. I never so much as Maryland crab and hash browns and eggs. I think there was bacon in it. I'm not sure, but and the Old Bay seasoning just tied it all in.
goodness, that's a whole lot of food they got there.
It's a lot of food. Well, it
It,
helped me stretch my per diem too. So I would go pretty much to where the man versus food guy would go, Adam Rich, and then I would get whatever the big food was, and that stretch out. That'd be my meal for the next 2 days. Stretch out my per diem. So in Baltimore, they also have a thing called pit beef, which is kind of like a barbecue thing. And I had like the guy from Man versus Food. There's a place called Chappie's Pit Beef, which kind of looks like a big trailer. It's actually in the parking lot of two strip clubs. So you put the Uber in, and they're like driving to the strip clubs. Like, I'm going to the Pit Beef. They're like, yeah, you are. Some meat, but no, they have a barbecue. And they had this Pit Beef, which is I guess this barbecue type thing they have. But I had like this thing. It was like turkey and corned beef and sausage, and it was all this meat just piled on this hoagie bun, and they top it your own way with barbecue sauce, and that was just pretty good. So yeah, pit beef in Baltimore and that, and then yeah, Cleveland, I had that barbecue spaghetti, which was interesting. That my cousin took me to. He's like, yeah, that's the cool thing about traveling too is I get to see like family and friends that live in that area. So I have actually my cousin in Cleveland. His big brother was a famous comedian in the '90s, John Henton, who
oh
played
yeah,
Overton and Handyman for Living Single. That's my cousin's big brother in Cleveland.
wow, that's pretty
Yeah,
neat. I miss
yeah,
that
like
show big time, like Queen Latifah and
yeah.
everything. And
That's one of the best theme songs, one of the top 20 theme songs of all time.
I
Uh,
agree wholeheartedly. Good
yeah,
stuff.
it comes on actually like VH1 now. VH1 show like that in the mornings. They'll show like a marathon of Fresh Prince of Bel Air, which is another great theme song, and then they'll go into Living Single now on VH1. But I'm like, oh, that's my cousin's brother,
Indeed.
Hinton.
Indeed, absolutely. And you had a lot of more acting roles at Universal Studios Entertainment from 2004 to presently. What other characters did you play besides Donkey and all those other stuff?
So yeah, so Donkey was like the only character like I did, but some of the other roles I got to do that I really love, not so much like like so the other working roles I did like at Fear Factor. Oh, so we go to Fear Factor. So after Nickelodeon was closing, they gave me an opportunity to interview for the new Fear Factor show. So like an interview slash audition, but to be like a production assistant. So I get to like make the gross food and like basically it was a stagehand, a stage assistant role, but I got a chance like to make the gross food and there the whole ingredients, the Fear Factor Live, they call it like the smoothie. So basically, the whole setup of Fear Factor Live Universal, we cast real part guests, um, actual real people. They're not actors, they're actually real people, and we have a stunt and the food challenge and the critter challenge. There's three separate challenges, but if you're doing one, you're not doing the other. So if you're doing the physical stunts, you're not doing the gross foods. The gross food is not doing the bugs on the head. Um, but uh, but we prep for all of them. But the gross food, mystery meat, the seafood, the milk, the bugs. Uh, so as you guys know, so the mystery meat medley was a spam and oysters we mashed up together to give it like a mystery meat look. And then the seafood surprise was oysters, canned clam, canned octopus, canned sardines, canned tuna, uh, the insects were crickets and mealworms. They were frozen, but we would spray them with cooking oil to give them like a sheen. And and the sour milk, they would say sour milk was actually my invention. Was like chunky milk. It actually started out as a prank. We used to use goat's milk, but I remember this is when we first started out in the beginning. I remember we had this unflavored gelatin, and as a prank, I put it in the milk, forgot about it. So when the producer went to pour the milk, she saw it just big solid lump just came out. I was like, oh, and she had to blend it. They had to muscle down. They didn't get the chance to finish that stunt, the competitors, but light bulb went off. So I remember I used some more flavored gelatin and mashed it up and put it in the milk so then it looked like lumpy milk. So I was just doing it as a joke. But then it turned into standard operating procedure, and that every production assistant had to make chunks of the milk. And one of the guys, one of my friends, he discovered how to mass produce it so that anybody could make it, and now it became part of the. So what started out as a joke, as a prank, became operating procedures. But one of the coolest moments I had, Fear Factor. So one year they actually filmed the actual show on our stage. So we kind of got to take the day off because they weren't using our stunts; they were doing their own stunts. It was like a family Fear Factor. But I had a chance to make the food for the creator of Fear Factor, or at least American creator of Fear Factor, a guy named Matt Kunitz. He's like the executive producer of Fear Factor. I remember being in the kitchen and showing him how we put everything together, and he's like, this isn't enough. You need something more. I got something for you. I have this product of Thailand. I think it's called like fish juice or fish something. It came in a glass bottle, kind of looked like muddy water, but when you open it up, the smell I can only compare it to like Tony Roberts said, like 1,000 asses. It smelled like 1,000 asses. I was like, whoa! And this is people really use this? Yeah, it's like fish sauce, the product of Thailand. Put that on your seafood surprise. But whenever I would open it in the break trailer, it would smell of the trailer, and everybody get mad at me. So I'd have to step outside to pour it in. But we only had just a couple of bottles, and once it was out, it was gone because they weren't going to keep buying it because it got expensive. But I got a chance to make our Fear Factor Live food for somebody that actually was one of the creators of the Fear Factor show. So that was a cool moment too, and I got to see Joe Rogan. I didn't get to meet Joe Rogan, but I got to see him. I didn't realize how big he was. But I remember backstage, just walking, just kind of crossing paths, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of big. I knew nothing about his martial arts background, and this is before he had this, massive podcast and all that. But he was so Joe Rogan Fear Factor. I was like, that's a really big, intimidating dude, man. And just kind of,
Indeed.
but yeah. So
Most definitely. And when you were at Walt Disney World,
yeah.
you acted and an MC. What were the acting roles that you had?
Oh
Other
yeah.
than what
Yeah. So I got a few opportunities at Disney to be like their MC for different things. So once I got in the street party and they liked what I did and they gave me full time, I started doing. Uh, so this is one of the cool things. I was an elf. I actually was filling Mark's shoes. Once again, Mark Daniels. I was following in his footsteps. So, Mark is like tall, 6 foot two, three. But I got to be an elf. I'm like 5'10", but they didn't. It wasn't a height thing. It was just they wanted funny actors, and Mark was not available. So I was pretty much like Mark Light. I was basically if you could get Mark, you get Gene. So, uh, so I got a chance to be an elf for the Disney Vacation Club members. So it was a special event at Epcot in between Canada and the UK. There's this big blue building, big convention space, and just for Vacation Club members, they'd have this Christmas party. They'd have elves. Um, but the cool thing about the elves, so they were all actors from all over property. So all the elves I got to work with were other actors I saw in other shows that I would go watch on my breaks, like other actors I looked up to. I was like, oh my god, I watched you in Hollywood Studios, and or hey, I've seen you in Hoop De Doo Review, and I became friends with. Once again, it's the coolest thing is becoming friends with people you're fans of. Like I'm fans. I'm a big fan of their work, and now I'm literally working side by side, bouncing jokes off of them, or just cheesy Christmas jokes, uh, and then the next year, they had Mark come back. So then I got a chance to work with Mark. We were kind of back to back, but we were playing like brothers. So he's like my little brother Tiny. But he uh, just to work off of him a little bit and work with some of the you know some really good actors and singers and and some of just my favorite performers. I just work. I got to be an elf, and then the next year when I was working with Mark, they had us be trivia hosts. So I was like, oh, I know how to do this. I host trivia. So then it was doing Christmas trivia, giving out prizes, uh, and I was working with the DJ and all that, and and then shortly after, the DJ came into my life after the Disney thing. Excuse me, my full time kind of went away. I was looking on what to do next, and there was the all the DJs are third party, and there's a DJ guy named Elliot. Elliot was a guy that I met through Rob, who we were talking about earlier. Rob was the one that got me the progressive gig. Well, Elliot is one of the top DJs on Disney property. He's actually the official DJ of Lucas Films or something, Lucas Arts, and he DJs all the Comic Cons. DJ Elliot, so he's like the premier nerd DJ. And he came to me years earlier when I was at Street Party. He was like, "Have you thought about DJing? Because the hard part is MCing. You got that part down. I can show you how to mix the music. That's the easy part." At the time, I was like, "No, I'm good," because I was comfortable. But then once my full time was going away, just like I did with Mark, "Hey, Elliot, remember me?" He's like, "Yes, I do." So, so I was looked into DJing for a little bit. I didn't have DJ equipment, but he had other DJs underneath him. They were really great DJs, MCs, and Robbie G and Chase and DJ Aussie Dave, and they all taught me different ways of how to mix music. And they're like Disney's looking more for performers. They're looking for MCs more than a music mixer. You don't have to be the master music mixer. You just have to know how to lead the Cupid Shuffle. You gotta know how to be silly with these dances. And I'm oh, that's perfect. Okay, I'd want to do that. I'd rather do that anyway. So they showed me the basics of DJing and it didn't quite take off, but I made some great friends from those DJs and learned a lot. I already was musically inclined anyway. I already loved music. Uh, but uh, but I DJ for a little bit using their equipment at not City Walk at Disney Springs, the waterfront stage. I kind of helped out with that, and then I did a solo thing at the stage by Earl of Sandwich. I did like just in the afternoon. I borrowed Aussie Dave's DJ equipment. So yeah, I got the DJ bit, but I'm definitely more of an MC than a DJ. Uh, and then, speaking of Comic Con, I got a chance to MC the Comic Con after it was last summer. Well, when they had MegaCon. Is it MegaCon that's in Orlando?
Yep.
Or,
Uh,
MegaCon. Yeah, Comic Con is like in San Diego. Okay, MegaCon. Okay, MegaCon. So MegaCon was in town last year. I got a chance to MC the after party, through Moshi Productions. They didn't know who I was, but I got referred to by somebody. I forgot who. Oh no, somebody knew I had MC. This is one of those things that's performers once again the business of performing, like know your worth. Somebody that knew me, that knew of me of MCing for Progressive and traveling uh, months before the event. They're like, "Hey, what's Progressive paying you? I want you to MC this event for MegaCon." And so I gave them my rates for Progressive Boat Show tour. He's like, "Oh yeah, I can do that." But what I didn't take in mind was the day rate because in Progressive, it's a longer day. It's like 10 in the morning to 8 at night. But I didn't take consideration that the party's gonna be like a couple hours. So I just gave them my rate. I mean, I still had a good time, but I was like, oh, I kind of accidentally undercut myself, not realizing that. But anyway, it was a Back to the Future theme. It was Enchantment Under the Sea dance party, and I'm a huge Back to the Future fan, and they wanted me to be Marvin Berry, Chuck Berry's cousin. And they actually had a live band, you know, Johnny Wild and the Delights. They were just amazing old school band. They performed at the Villages, and they were just amazing. And they had a Marty McFly that played by Rob Sims, who happened to be a friend of mine. So we all had good chemistry. My buddy DJ Elliott was one of the DJs there. So that's good about entertainment. And I always tell all the younger performers, always be cool with everybody. You never know who you're going to run into in this business, whether they're in your discipline or not. You will keep running into the same people over and over again. So me and Elliott reconnected, and then Moshi was really happy with what I did, and I got a chance to be Marvin Berry and had my hand wrapped in the gauze, like the blood. That that came from a happy accident. They didn't have the gauze. So one of the guys was like, "Oh, one of the girls has lipstick," and then I'm like, "Oh, that's right." So then wrapped my hand in toilet paper, got her. She's like, "Yeah, you can use lipstick," and rub lipstick, and that was like the blood on the hand of Marvin Berry. And when they were playing Johnny Be Good, I was like, right before they played it, I was like, okay, that was good. Can you play something that really cooks? Like we did the whole movie. We didn't even rehearse it. It was just kind of came naturally. It was just they just sang Earth Angel, and I was like, all right, let's hear for Johnny Wild and Lights and Marty McFly and Doc and Jennifer. All right, guys, Earth Angel is great, but can we play something that really cooks? And they went right into it. It was like, I mean, we didn't even rehearse it. It was just we all knew the movie, we all knew our parts. And then what I did, I stood off stage. I had my phone in my hand. I would had my, listen to this. I did the whole thing off stage, and that is one of the coolest moments ever. It's like just once again, one thing leads to another, man. That Disney gig and the progressive thing led to this, and it's just an amazing feeling, just kind of doing what you love and getting to do like iconic things and be around other iconic people. Love
Indeed,
it,
and
man.
most definitely. And being that you're a traveling MC with progressive boat travel with the progressive boat and with the Bear Creek Company, what other traveling folks have you worked with as a traveling MC?
Oh, good question. Yes. So besides the Progressive Boat Show tours and the Beaver Creek, uh, I was also at MC last summer for the Pokemon Go Fest in Chicago, Illinois. That was my first time outside of Progressive, you know, doing an MC thing, and once again, it played into my strengths as a trivia host. It was basically hosting I was one of many. That was awesome. I got to meet other MCs, and I got to meet this other traveling MC guy named Rico Williams, who's the official MC for all John Madden events. He actually travels year round as an MC. And I'm like, that's official. I want to get to. So me and him became really good friends. But I got a chance to do the Pokemon Go Fest in Chicago as um, doing trivia and hey, welcome to this. We got this, we got prize giveaways, we got trivia, um, and that same company a few months later, we did the Harry Potter Wizards Unite events in Indianapolis, Indiana, which is fun because I'd never been to Indianapolis before. I started seeing some of the same cities over and over again. Like I've seen Chicago before through the boat show, but it's cool seeing Chicago in the summertime because usually the boat shows are in the winter. It's snowing everywhere. It's the coldest cities in America in the dead of winter, and people are buying boats. But I got to see Chicago in the summertime, which is awesome. And then I got to go see Indianapolis in the summer and do the Wizards Unite Harry Potter event, all like the apps. And the cool thing about that is I'm a huge nerd, and it was one of the nerdiest weekends ever. So not only was you know Harry Potter's in town, they also had Comic Con. I think was in town. They do Comic Con in Indianapolis. It was Comic Con, and Weird Al Yankovic was performing. And I was like, I'm a huge Weird Al fan. He's right across from our hotel. He was actually using the same place one of our areas is using. So, and they literally just handed me my per diem. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to see a Weird Al concert. So went to see Weird Al, who was like a hero of mine. I'm a huge fan of song parodies, and then I did that. And then also, I had a chance to go back to Cleveland in the summertime, which is awesome. Uh, Toward the MLB All Star event, which my buddy Rico got me into, but not as an MC. He's an MC, but he got me in as a DJ role. I was playing music for them. Was able to find like a DJ music app, and I had a thousand something songs. And it's funny, I was playing all these old school songs, and they're like, you're doing okay, but do you have any top 40? And I had no top 40 at the time. So that night, I'm like, I had to figure out what's new, what's happening, and so, but it actually kind of helped me find like new music, and because I was kind of doing my old school music I did for progressive, but then it kind of helped me get in the loop of what's not. I'm like, I actually like some of these newer songs, and that was through another marketing company, and then that same marketing company is through the Coca Cola. I need to put that on my wrist. I forget how I did that. I emceed when they had the All Star Soccer here last summer. So that same company got me as an MC. I'm like, oh, now you guys get to see me as an MC because they only saw me as a DJ in Cleveland. So they saw me as an MC. But then Florida being Florida, rain 30, thunderstorm hit, and I was only got the MC for maybe like an hour or so, and then that was it. But they still paid me a full day rate and all that. So, but I was the MC for the MLS Major League Soccer. I said did a little bit. I said a little bit of DJ. I wouldn't say I'm a DJ, but I played the part of a DJ at the MLB All Star Cleveland, the Harry Potter in Chicago. I mean Harry Potter in Indianapolis and Pokemon in Chicago while I was in the Progressive. So I had a plan. So here was my plan, Sarah. This was going to be my plan, which is on hold. So the plan was I had a 5 year or a 5 year plan. What years are now? 20. So in 3 years uh, would be my 20 years of Universal. So my plan was if I'm not full time at Disney or Universal performing, and if I travel like my buddy Rico, where if I'm on the road every other week, so it doesn't matter where I live, uh, my plan was to relocate to Las Vegas because that's one of my favorite cities because I love the mountains and I love entertainment. Um, but the plan was not to work in Las Vegas, was just to have a place to be based out of, but just fly out like every other. Like if I was going to fly out every other week, where just my place is just storage, which probably my place is now. I'm hardly ever here. Well, now I'm here all the time. But the goal was to, if all that lined up, was to go out to Vegas, uh, use my veterans home loan. Apparently, I was supposed to qualify for a veterans home loan, so use my Navy veteran stuff to see if I qualify for a home and get like a house or a condo out there in Vegas. Um, but travel, so probably Airbnb it. So that's making money while I'm traveling. So that was the whole plan uh, of like I wanted to travel all the time, like my buddy Rico Williams. But now that's on hold, and I think that might get pushed back a couple of years because traveling gigs might be a while before they need us. But my ultimate goal was to relocate to Las Vegas because there's mountains and entertainments, and Vegas seems to have it. And it's the cost of living is comparable to Florida. So I can have the mountains, I can have the entertainments, and and just be based out of somewhere where just I can still fly all over. So it's still a big major hub. So that's. But then I would still think about still stay seasonal, universal. Every few months because my buddy Ruben, the one that works at the Steve Harvey show, every few months he'd actually fly from L.A. to Orlando to do donkey for the weekend, just enough to keep this ID to fly back to LA. So my plan was gonna do a Reuben is live in Las Vegas, but fly to Orlando for a week, pick up shifts wherever I can. Doesn't have to be donkey, uh, and then go back home to Vegas. So that was the plan, but that's pretty much been on hold. So it might be maybe another couple of years. We'll have to revisit that. But fortunately, like I have money saved up, so it's just one of those things where I might just hang back here a little bit more and wait it out, see how the world goes, how what the market dictates where I go. Do I need to just stay in Florida? Like I still don't mind. Like I'm not trying to escape Florida or land. I still love it here. But every time I have friends that live in Las Vegas, and I visit them every year. And every year I go to Vegas, I feel that home feeling. Every year I go to Vegas. I've been going every year since '08, '09, and now I started to do more local things with my friends who are locals, and I get to do what they do, or just seeing the mountains, just being out and like being at a stoplight and like that's a mountain. Like, come on, man, just you know, freaking out over just mountains. And but I like how you go to the mountains during the day and then you go see like David Copperfield at night or Cirque du Soleil at night. So I like the both. I like the wilderness and the entertainment. So like the best of both worlds. So I feel like
Absolutely.
Vegas has that.
Indeed, and I believe it'll all happen because you live that Forrest Gump life, and it'll all happen. For sure.
That look, just right place, right time. Forrest Gump luck. I mean, it looked
Yeah.
like it was going in that direction. So
I think it'll happen. I believe it'll happen. So definitely, definitely, definitely. And it's cool to have like that one city that you always go back to every year, and to me that's
yeah,
Pueblo, and that's
yeah,
always my home feeling. So I can't wait to like live there permanently because there's mountains there too, and the comedy
yeah.
scene's booming, and so
Okay,
yep, and then my festival's there, so I can organize it a lot better and make it better every year. So we're
true.
celebrating 7 years this year, so we're gonna make it different, like live streaming it on YouTube and
Okay, yeah.
social distancing and all that stuff. So make sure everyone's all set proper. But yeah, it's amazing and it's such an incredible journey, and I'm so glad Marcus Crespo introduced us together, like
Yes.
each other, and it was so perfect that he said this is one guy you got to interview, but I didn't know when, but it happened because we both have that Forrest Gump moment,
Yeah,
and
man.
it's I'm glad everything came back full circle the way it did. Is there any final words you'd like to give to the viewers at home and that are going to watch this in the future too?
No, I mean, if you make it this far, like I wasn't expecting 2.5 hours.
Me neither.
Not at all. But I don't really get to tell my story often of military to circus to Nickelodeon to Trial MC. Um, but yeah, we made it this far. Thank you for listening, and no matter what's going on, just be uh, as the immortal words of Bill and Ted: be excellent to each other and party on. Those are my
Absolutely.
words of advice there. No matter what happens, be excellent to each other and party on.
Indeed. It was such a great I watched those two movies last night, and then
Yeah.
I'm hoping to see Face the Music here soon. So
Same here.
indeed,
Same,
and
same.
party on for sure. And
Yep.
Gene, thank you so much for your time this evening. And I didn't plan to
Yeah.
go 2.5 hours either, but I'm so glad we did. And
Yes.
so I'll send you the link to the publication where the video will be on and everything like that, and all that good stuff. And I'll send you the press kit of how like the whole Clive thing happened and everything.
Clive Barker. Yes.
Yeah, so
I
I'll
have his
send you
Book
all
of
that.
Blood. I have to find. I think in my drawer. I think I still have the Book of Blood. One of the last things I read before we got phones was Books of Blood because it was an anthology of different stories. So,
It's
Books of
going to be
Blood.
on. They're turning it into a Hulu thing here coming up. So next month is going to premiere. So
Oh,
I believe.
perfect.
So definitely watch that, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
so many great movies came out of that book, like insane, like
Yeah.
Candyman came out of that book, and Lord of Illusions, and Midnight Meat Train. So many of
Midnight
them.
Meat Train. Yes.
Yes, so many of
Yes.
them. But
Yes.
man,
Bradley Cooper. Yeah.
indeed,
His first
Rampage.
starring role.
Yeah. Indeed. All right, Gene.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking part of Cenobites Saturday Night Cenobites, and I call it
Yes.
Saturday Night Cenobites because of the Cenobites from Hellraiser, and
Cenobites. I used to do my tweet like the
like
chatter.
yeah. I met Nicholas Brennan Vince a couple times. He's such a good guy, and so
Oh, you got to meet the Cenobites?
yeah, and like and like Simon Bamford, he played Butterball in the first two
Yes.
movies. We went to Santa Monica Pier and rode the roller coaster together. And then we met up in Atlanta because I said, I'm going on my stand up comedy tour. I'm doing like 14 shows in 10 days. Atlanta and Savannah are part of the tour. And he goes, I'll be at your show in Atlanta because like there was like a Days of the Dead convention and like Clive was there and a
Yeah.
bunch of the Hellraiser characters were there. And
Yeah.
so he meets up with me at Relapse Theater and in Atlanta. They used to be open, and like Rory Scovel filmed his special there on Netflix, and there was
Yeah.
like 300 people in the whole audience, and there was like nobody, like there's no room in the like to sit or stand. So everyone sit and stand like wherever they could fit in, and it was like overpopulated. And they were making grilled cheese on the corner of the room too, and it was called Sweet Baby Cheeses. It was like the most out and
Sweet
crazy.
baby Jesus.
Yeah, it was nuts, and I have the video, and it's on my press kit too. And Simon filmed it for me, and he goes, "I was dying." And that glory hole story that you were talking about had Clive rolling, like,
Oh my gosh.
and like you could hear like the moans and the groans and everything in that thing. And like I just wanted to make people laugh, but when people moan and groan, it's like an extra awesomeness, you know?
Yeah.
And like I was like 6 minutes, and like my friend was there, and he goes, "Dude, you destroyed that place." And I'm like,
Yes.
I can't believe it. And like the laughter was nuts because it was like it's not like a bar show. Like at the theaters, like it comes in waves like the ocean. Like you gotta wait for all those laughs to come through before you can go into your next
Oh,
joke. And it
true.
seemed like forever up there. But it's like I'm so glad Simon filmed it, Butterball of all that character.
Butterball.
He filmed
Butterball.
it. So cool.
Oh. Wait. What was Doug Bradley there?
Yeah, Doug Bradley was there. Ashley Lawrence was there.
Did you get to meet and talk to them, interact with?
Yeah, I got an autograph from Doug Bradley, and he goes, "Dude, selfies are free with me." And so he took a selfie with me. It was so cool. And
Oh,
I think Tony Todd was there from Candyman. Like it
Tony
was like a
Todd.
huge line of all these cool horror folks. And so like
Yes.
I just wanted to see Clive again, and he was so happy to see me in Atlanta, and I was like so happy to see him. He goes,
That's
"Dude, what are you
cool.
doing? Trying to like?" I said, "You don't. I'm not gonna charge you for autographs, but I'm like I already paid Clive, and I want to put money in your pocket." He goes, "Never ever have to pay for my autographs." Like you were there for me like for 4 years. And I'm like, I know. But I just wanted to like support him because like I don't want to like do that to Clive. Like I know that he would never like charge me, but I have to like, I'm so in debt to him for all the things that he's done for me. And so I had to.
Yeah, I do this. If I have friends that are performing, like I don't expect free tickets. Like I'll pay to see a friend's theater show, or even like comedy. Like if I want to see a comedian, uh, the tickets aren't available. Like I'll buy it. Like I remember before Preacher Lawson blew up. I mean, we were friends with Preacher, but like I'm still gonna pay to support Preacher. I mean, so like I will like pay to see my friends. I still want to support, so I never expect for now if they offer. Of course, I'll take it, but I have every plan of intent. Like I'm gonna support your arts because I know what it's like. So I don't mind paying the 20 some dollars or whatever it is because
Yeah,
this is helping you as well. So
most definitely. And
yeah,
hopefully one day when you go up back to Beaver Creek, you can stop by the Pueblo and come to my fest.
yes.
It's free, so you don't have to spend any money. You can just like all 3 days are free, and so just enjoy the music and the comedy and the storytelling and the podcast, and that's all I ever
Absolutely.
want. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
and it's pretty awesome. So, definitely if you love music and comedy, like original music and no hacky comics, come to my festival and you'll enjoy it. So,
I
yeah,
sure will.
and everyone gets paid what they want. I said, "Do you guys want food, drinks, and shirts, whatever?" And they're all, "We just want the shirts. They're so cool." And it's like a mashup of my two favorite writers, Clive and Hunter S. Thompson.
Okay.
So I took
All
Fear
right.
and Loathing and I mashed it with Hellraiser, and then it's a
Oh, that explains. Okay.
pretty interesting stuff. So like the Saturday Night Cenobites logo is what is was one of the years. So I just took that old artwork and I just put this on there. So it's
Oh,
pretty neat.
I love it because
Awesome.
I mean I love the Cenobites, love horror movies, Hellraiser. So I actually
Most
ended up working up another happy accident.
Another happy accident for sure, and this is quite a blessing. And thank you so much, Dean, for taking time out of your day to do this, and it means the world
Of
to me. And I can't
course,
wait to see
yeah.
you again, and hopefully I get to
Yes.
see you at Universal and or wherever you are and
Right.
perform. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Well, yeah, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. I'm glad I got to do this, and yeah, this was something that I'm glad I got to get all that out. Got to tell my stories now it's out there. So
Indeed.
thank you for having this platform or allowing me on your platform.
You're
Uh,
welcome, Gene.
tell
And
my story.
as a friendly reminder from Gene and myself, be excellent to each other and party on.
Party on.
Indeed. Cool. Thanks, Gene. Have a great night, everyone, and
Thank
thanks for
you.
tuning in.
Yes.